Yeah, I'm alive. Hi, guys.
Earl Wilson, J.P. Morgan, had a nighttime meeting. Welcome everyone tonight to NYSTV for the broadcast of the Midnight Ride. Tonight we will be celebrating the Feast of Trumpets with our families, and so we will be broadcasting a special episode with two marathon presentations. And these two presentations include King Charles, is he the Antichrist, and also the seven
Hey, Diane. Good to see you.
apocalypse. So tonight, with it being trumpets, we're in for a apocalyptic night. So I hope you guys join us. Let us know where you're from in the chat. Let us know where you're from in the comments. We love you guys so much. We hope you enjoy.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who was able to make war with him?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. It is my great honor and much excitement that I welcome all of you into the Puritan Bar and into the NYSTV studios for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, the Antichrist is king. John is going to be taking a look at a subject tonight that I don't know what you'd find to be more timely or more important than this. We're going to be looking at literally the beast government coming together in its final completion. So
this is a year old, Di.
Get ready. It all starts right now because we are now
Live. What's up, guys? It's so good to be here with David Carrico. I know you guys noticed his hat, man. He's got his big top hat and Donna just got it all spiffied up for him. So give him a like for that. All right, David, let's rock it. We're gonna rock it together because I'm definitely gonna want your input in this because all of this stuff is accumulation of stuff that we've learned over the years and books that we've read, things that we've gathered. And so this is that, this is what we're looking at. And something special happened recently that really just made us take another look at what we're looking at tonight. So we're going to start by reading a scripture here. If I can get my PowerPoint pulled up here. In Revelation 13, 1 and 2. You guys have heard this in our intro. It says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority." And so when we look at that verse, there's a lot of different I guess revelations about this verse. There's some people that will believe that this is fully one system, and I agree with that. And there's some people that will say this is a person that's talking about, and I agree with that also because I think it's both. And we're going to talk about how that's possible right now. So in 2 Thessalonians 3:4, this is a verse that I fully believe is speaking about this man, this Antichrist person. And I want to read this because I think it's important to kind of help reveal and help us to know that until this happens, there's no way to 100% pin down anybody, because up to this point, all we have is clues. All we have is a lot of facts, a lot of evidence to say that we might know who it is. But at this point, until this is accomplished, we don't 100% know for sure, because there's been many times, and David can attest to this, he's been around this longer than I have, where people have said, this is the Antichrist, this is the Antichrist, and there's so many things that they can give you.
Diane, I wonder how that's going to work. He's supposed to be the last pope from St. Malachi's prophecies. So how's that going to work, I wonder?
As evidence that points to that. Now, a lot of those, you know, I guess people that they've accused in the past of being the Antichrist did fit the bill in a lot of ways. But you're going to find out tonight there's one person that fits the bill in way more ways than just a lot. He fits them in almost every single one except for a couple. And this is one of the couple that he has not fulfilled yet. And it says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God, and that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So we see that this person is going to come and believe that he is God. He's going to show himself that he is God by sitting in the temple, and this is how he's going to make his mark. And this is how we're going to know, right? This is how we're going to know for sure that this has happened and this man is here. And here's another verse in Matthew 24:14 through 15. Now, David, would you agree that so far those verses that I've quoted have to do with the Antichrist?
Yes, they have to do with, most definitely, they relate to the two beasts that are going to come, that are going to work in tandem and implement that global government that the Bible tells us is going to happen, and that these people are obviously working for and pushing toward at breakneck speed.
All right, Matthew 24:14 through 15, it says, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place. And it's
Diane, I've seen where they're saying that they clean it like the Doge with Musk cleaning house. That's to set up the V system. I have seen that. And I saw Bannon, what's his name? Steve Bannon. I saw him do a Nazi salute. It's on YouTube. He done a Nazi salute.
says, whoso readeth, let him understand. And if you read Daniel, which we're not going to do right now because we've done, I would say at least 10 shows on this kind of the abomination of desolation. But if you look at what the abomination of desolation has been in the past, in the book of Maccabees, you see this being played out. And what happens in Maccabees is there is a ruler called Antiochus Epiphanes, and he takes control, and he is an evil man, a sort of beast of his own making, a really bad guy, believes he is God, also believes that he has a statue of Zeus that he puts up in the temple. He puts the statue up, and he sacrifices a pig on the temple, and the blood covers the altar and everything like that. And this is what is called the abomination of desolation. So some kind of image, a figure, is put in this position. And we're not going to get into all of that right now, but I just want to make it clear that if you really want to study this, you're going to look at this, you're going to look at Daniel, and you're going to look at all these things, which is something that we have all done. And it can be very confusing because you have a king of the north, you have a king of the south, you have a king of the west, you have all of these different things going on in Daniel that are just mind-blowing, really, to say the least. And then you have the prophecy in Second Esdras, which has a three-headed eagle, which is something that is said to have been revealed to Daniel, but this is a more full revelation of what is seen in Daniel. So there's so many different things to compare to and look at. Now, we're not going to look at every single one of those things because we have done that before. And I think one of the shows I did recently on Antichrist, we talked quite a bit about what the image of the beast could be, etc. And so we know this, guys. We know that the system that controls this world, we understand that there is a system that has been working in the shadows for a very long time. You can call it the hidden hand. You can call it whatever you may want to call it, but the fact is, in Ephesians 6:12, it says, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And so we're told here, this is what we're fighting against. We are literally in a war with people in high places, and what they call princes. Guess what? That's a principality. That's what they call them in even in the royal website. You can look and you'll see that they call them principalities. And we know that there's a system at work in 2020, which is a weird time for it, because 2020 also is associated with vision in your eyes. 2020 means perfect vision, but in 2020, a lot of things were opened up to people. People started seeing the cabal. They started seeing the magician behind the veil, if you will. They started seeing the evil that has magnified from our leaders, from the people.
Diane, remember Stan from Prophecy with Stan? Remember he said the revolution's going to start with people demanding their entitlements? And that's what's exactly going on with the Democrats now, with all these protests and all that. This could lead to what Stan from Prophecy said, because it's a setup for it, isn't it?
This world. And they saw that the whole world was together on something that was very, I would say, to me, it felt very dominating and scary in a way, because it was something that they were trying to push on every single person in the world. And somehow the leaders of the world were able to come together in order to get this job done. And so with that being said, right now we have different orders that we have pinpointed that are definitely in control. One of these orders is the structure of Freemasonry. Now, you have two different ways you can go in Freemasonry. You can go down the Scottish Rite, or you can go in the Yorkish Rite in Freemasonry. Now, both of these, and with that, you have the French version of Freemasonry, which is the dark side of Freemasonry, and then you have the English version, which is the, I guess, regular Freemasonry is what it's called. And so you have the
French Freemasonry, they were behind the French Revolution.
This structure that we have fully exposed over the years as being a organization that gathers so many different occult people, hides people like the Illuminati and organizations as such. They are pervasive in the entire world nearly. David has done many exposés on Freemasonries over the years and led many Freemasons to the Messiah once he exposed to them what they are actually a part of. We have the Illuminati. This is an organization that's even higher than the Freemasons, but they hide within the Freemasonry. We have it started by Adam Weishaupt. We have people like this, Sabbatizzetti, which David did a show called, I believe we called it the, what was it?
Kabbalah Wizards.
Kabbalah
the
Wizards.
Flight of the Kabbalah Wizards.
Which had an integral part in the Illuminati, and also a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of Kabbalism and Judaism to this day. Then you have this, which I don't know who made this.
A football-sized UFO, Diane, that would be a reconnaissance UFO, wouldn't it? If it's not manned, it would be a spy UFO.
But it's a really pretty good representation to see that there are so many webs of things out there that are all interconnected, and all of them have a place of power in the society. And it really is hard to pinpoint which one of these is in charge. And so this is the thing with the system idea of the system being the beast. We can see that. We see the system of the beast. It is everywhere. It's pervasive over all of humanity almost. You can't go anywhere without one of these groups here, without one of these groups leading the way. And I think that whoever did this chart, they did a pretty good job. It's pretty nice. I mean, I don't know exactly if it's 100% accurate on everything they're doing here, but they really did a good job of pinpointing a lot of the societies that are at work. Now, in our country alone, one of the societies that took over control of our government and a lot of government's currencies and financial situations was the Federal Reserve. Now, the Federal Reserve, the banking systems, they went in, they took control. This is another arm of this beast. They took control in 1913 underneath Woodrow Wilson. J.P. Morgan had a nighttime meeting, had a few people in it, locked the doors. Next thing you know, hours later, Woodrow Wilson comes out boom, he signs this thing that's called the Federal Reserve Act. And it is how our monetary system became controlled by a private group of bankers that control the other world monetary systems. And of course, it took a few wars, took some coaxing, took some assassinations, took a lot of horrible things to happen for that to happen, but that did eventually happen. This is a quote from Woodrow Wilson right here in The New Freedom. It says, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacturing are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." Now, this is a president of the United States speaking on these things. And David, before we go on, would you have anything that you'd like to add to this? Because I know that there's so much that I'm kind of glossing over, but I really would like to expand on a few of these issues if we can.
Well, I agree that chart is very good. And what people are understanding now that are studying this is that the enemy we're facing, it's global and it's organized. There's definitely coordination in this. And it is really something when you have presidents of the United States realize that they're not really in control. And I think, like on security clearances, there's like 10 or 15 above the president.
Yes.
There are things he does not have the security clearance to look at.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy. It literally is the deep state, as some would call it. Call it what you will. It's there. And we see this phenomenon of people that are not elected to office that are really controlling the people that are.
Yeah, that's exactly. And from this quote here that I'm getting ready to present here in this book is from the Conspirators Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300. Now, the Committee of 300, most scholars and most people would agree, including the people up top, is one of the top groups. This group pretty much controls most of these other groups. Now, there are groups, believe it or not, that have members of higher order that are actually in both clubs, right? You have the Order of the Garter, for instance, and in the kingships that is actually even higher than these. But so let me read this. It says, "How the Committee of 300 arranges elections. The term fair and free elections has no meaning in the U.S.
Man.
The candidates for the presidency are selected
Hey,
by
Ray,
the
it's good to
Committee of
see ya.
300. So in reality, it does not matter who wins the election and goes on the election and goes on to the White House. The New World Order is not new. It has been around and developing under one or another guise for a very long time, but is perceived as a development of the world, which is not the case. The New World Order is past and present." This is by John Coleman in this book. If you haven't read that book, I think I suggest it's a very good book, and it really does kind of show a lot of this is. Now, there was another book that you mentioned the other day that's a good book on this subject as well, that was written by Professor Bill Clinton,
Carol Quigley,
Carol
Tragedy
Quigley.
and Hope.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's another good book on the subject. There's many good books on the subject, but this is one of the best in my opinion.
I agree.
And so now today, and this is just kind of getting into what we see after 2020, what was presented in front of us. Where is the forum for all of these talks? And that we have the World Economic Forum. Now, the World Economic Forum, I actually thought this, I said this on the air and I was wrong. I thought that King Charles was actually the founder of this, but it wasn't. It was Klaus Schwab. Now, King Charles does have a big role in this, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But the World Economic Forum was started as a forum that was for people, the leaders of the world, men of industry, could come together and formulate a plan, and then they could foment that plan. They have leaders that are strategically placed all over the world. They have leaders of industry that are strategically placed, actually even in media, etc. And they seem like a very strong entity, which they are. Now, if you look at Klaus Schwab, this is something that most people don't really know about Klaus Schwab, but he's highly decorated. These are just a few of the honors and the orders that he's a part of. He's part of the Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire. And it's the Order of Chivalry, the Grand Decoration of Honor in gold with the sash of the Republic of Austria, Knight of the Legion of Honor, and Order of Merit from the Federal Republic of Germany. And these are just a few. There's more on there, but these are pretty prestigious awards that this man's received. So a lot of people, you know, when they look at him, they think, man, this guy can't be serious. Like, he looks like Dr. Evil up there telling us that he's going to take over the world. He's going to take everything from us. We're going to be happy about it. But the weird thing about all this stuff is that the fact that they're out here presenting that to us right now tells me a few things. It tells me, one, that it's probably too late to do anything about it on a macro scale. And I hate to say that, but I really truly believe that on a macro scale, we are not going to stop anything, because I think it's ordained by God. But there's a lot that can be done on a minor scale, on a micro scale in our own lives. And we'll definitely talk about that too. David, do you have anything to add before we move on here?
Yeah, it is most definitely. If we do a YouTube video here, the devil isn't going to hold his tent, leave town. It's written in the book what's going to happen, and it's going to come. Like John said, the important thing for us is to realize what our role is as preaching the gospel and giving truth to people. Now is our time to get the truth out to people, to where they can get their eyes open, they can see what's happening and prepare themselves for it. God has always worked with the remnant. The same is true now. We're the remnant of Israel, and we are the people that the Lord will use in any situation.
Agreed, man. And it's important to remember, because it's discouraging a lot of times, because you look at stuff and you're like, you know, how can this be the way our world is? How can evil be called good, good be called evil? How can the good guys die out, right? How is this possible that this is happening? And how are the evil people thriving so hard? But we have to understand the system that we're in. The system that we're in isn't a Christian system, like a lot of people have been led to tell us, right? The people have been telling us this is a Christian nation, this is all of these different things, but that couldn't be farther from the truth. You know, when you get to the root of the history of our nation, you see the idols that are placed in our capital. You start to see a different story. You start to see that there's a false version of Christianity. You start to see that there is two separate versions of Christianity, and the Messiah, who the Messiah is, and is very dominant in the world. The one is not the one that we would like to be dominant. The Jesus we would like to be dominant, the Messiah we would like to be dominant, is not the dominant one in the world right now. There's a worship coming of a master that's going to be so hard for people to see. For even people like me and David, when we see who's coming to the throne, we will see that this man has qualifications. It'll be hard for people to understand what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so go ahead, David, if you want to say something.
Well, you know, he's going to fool most people.
Yeah.
You know, like Jesus said in Matthew, if possible, even the very elect. And he's going to fool a lot of people. Like we were talking last week, he will be a king of fierce countenance that can understand dark sentences. And even the people that are closest to him won't be able to figure this guy out.
Yeah. Yeah. And in Revelation, it says that he's going to institute laws, and he's going to institute things. And and one way we're going to be able to tell, like, if what we're talking about tonight is true, and if it is right, we're going to see something happen.
Have you been,
that is going to be
right?
unmistakable according to the prophecy. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think actually in the last Mark of the Beast one, we talked a lot about that, because we talked about the head wound being healed, the image of the beast being placed for everyone to worship, etc. So we'll get into that here in a minute. We'll talk more about it. But so this is what, now this isn't biblically what it takes for the Messiah to be accepted. This is what it's going to take for everyone to accept the Messiah here on earth. Now, and obviously there's some of these things are a biblical standard that have to happen for the anti-Messiah, for him to be the anti-Messiah. But it's also going to look like he's the Messiah, because he's going to come as the Messiah. He's going to present himself as the Messiah. He's not going to present himself as, you know, Bob Marley raised from the dead or anything like that. He's going to present himself as a Messiah. So one, he must be a king. We know that this is a king. One, he must claim to be God. Another, he must claim to be God. Another, he must be of the line of King David. Another, he must have power greater than any other on earth. And he must be able to bring the world together to save humanity. Now, David, would you add anything to that list? I know that there's so many other things that we could add probably, but would you say that is a fair list of things that need to happen.
That's a pretty good list of the top 5 bullet points. You know, these are pretty spot on.
Jump.
Yeah, because you know there's a lot of different religions looking for Messiah right now, and 3 of the top ones that I can think of are the Judaism. They're looking for their Messiah. The Buddhists and New Agers are looking for their Messiah, and so are the Islamic people looking for their Messiah. Now, these are the names of Maitreya is the Buddhist / New Age Messiah. I remember a speech where the name of the man escapes me. You would know exactly who I'm talking about, but he made a speech about the Antichrist being in London since
Benjamin Krim.
Benjamin Krim. He made a speech declaring that Maitreya was there in London. And I remember that speech. You remember that speech?
Yeah.
That was interesting. And there's stuff in a book that I'm going to talk about in a minute that associates that time frame with something interesting. And then you have the Mahdi, which is going to have to be something the whole Islamic world will accept as their Messiah. Now, that's a big order to fill, right? To be able to be accepted by the Islam, by the New Age Buddhists, and to be accepted by Judaism, and to be accepted by the rest
Diane doesn't look terrorist related, does it?
of the world is going to be a feat. And a lot of people would say there's nobody alive right now that could possibly fulfill those things. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due, because me and David have been talking about these things a lot. We've been looking into these things, and there's a guy that wrote several books. And because of these books, I had a suspicion for a long time that the Antichrist would be of a certain lineage, because ultimately most lineages of all the powerful people in the world boil down to one area. And these books prove that. And we've talked about this many times in the past and looked it up, looked at the charts, looked at the lore on all of these different families. And by reading these books and also looking at those qualifications, I've come to the conclusion that whoever will be the Antichrist will be out of the royal family that comes from the Welsh. They will be from that family. They're all the families of the world end up modeling down to the Merovingian Tudor kings and all of that, and then they culminated into the king that we have now. The king that we have now, King Charles. And when I say the king that we have now, people are like, he's not our king. We got independence from him, independence from them in the United States. But I would beg to differ on that, because I'll show you why I beg to differ that we got independence from Britain here in a minute. But I would definitely beg to differ, and I can show you why here in a minute. So this is another clue that I want to get into real in depth here, because I think that David, you'll have a lot to say about this, and we could talk about this subject. This could be a whole show on its own, really, if we and I believe we have done shows on this before. And Revelation 13, it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy." Now, the key words that I've highlighted here are out of the sea. Now, I'm going to read from this book called The Bloodline of the Holy Grail, one of the books that I have on here. And I'm going to go to page 150. And this book is about the Pendragons. And we're going to read about this because this is where this kingship lineage comes from. When it says out of the sea, it's saying out of the sea for a reason. I'm going to read why that reason they're saying it coming out of the sea is right here for you guys, because this is really mind-blowing. Okay, so I'm just going to read from here, the 2nd chapter here. If you have this book, this is a chapter you can go to and kind of look at here. So it says, "The immortal sea beast was said to be ever incarnate in a dynasty of ancient kings, whose symbol was a fish. This became an emblem of the Merovingian kings, along with the Lion of Judah and the fleur-de-lis, which was introduced in the late 5th century by King Clovis to denote the royal bloodline of France. Prior to this, the familiar Judaic trefoil had been emblematic on the covenant of circumcision. Both the rampant lion and the fleur-de-lis were later incorporated into the royal arms of Scotland." I'm going to read one more paragraph here. "In Arthurian lore, the Davidic sovereign lineage was represented by the Fisher Kings of the Grail family, and the patriarch line was to denote the name of Anfortis, a symbolic style corrupted in Infortis, meaning in Latin in strength, It was identified with the Hebrew name Boaz, the great-grandfather of David, who is remembered in modern Freemasonry. And it goes on to talk a little bit more about these Grail kings, but it also talks about, this is why we see the symbol of the fish, the Ictus, and this is why we have the Pope that has the mitre. This is where we hear about Dagon, because they all go back to these Dagon, these beasts that came from the sea. When you look back in ancient Mesopotamia, you see that is the same lore where these kings, these Anunnaki, Akkad, or Akkadian kings came, not Akkadian, and then whatever, the Nephilim kings, this is where they came. Anunnaki is the name I'm looking for. Anunnaki kings, this is where the lineage derives from. And so, like we said before, now a lot of people have said, well, how did anything survive? How were there giants after the flood? And I think this gives us a clue as why, because there is a family, a lineage that actually comes from a sea beast. And the sea beasts, when we talk about the Pinda dragons, it's pretty interesting. I'm going to read this too real quick, David. It says, the Sicambrian Franks, from whose female line the Merovingians emerged, were associated with Grecian Arcadia before migrating to Rhineland. As we've seen, they called themselves the New Mage, or the New Covenant, just as the Essenes of Qumran had once been known. This Arcadian legacy was responsible for the mysterious sea beast, the Bistae Neptunus, as symbolically defined in the Merovingian ancestry. The relevant sea lord was King Pallas, a god of old Arcadia, whose predecessor was the great Oceanus. In fact, the concept dated back as far as the ancient kings of Mesopotamia, who were said to be born of Tiamat, the great mother of the primordial salt waters. So, David, add something to that, man. I know you got some salt you want to add on there.
Well, from the earliest times, if you look at the serious students of the mysteries like Mr. Garnier and Mr. Hislop, the oldest secret name for God ever known and used in the Babylonian and Sumerian mysteries was Oannes, the beast that come out of the sea. And all of those legends talk about this beast that would come in and teach them their truth and all of this hidden knowledge that he had. And then at night, he would slink back into the sea. And when we're talking people that are descended from the sea beast, we're talking about people really descended from the sea beast. And these people were so obsessed with keeping that bloodline pure. You can look at some of the people that are the British royals. You have some really strange looking people because they would have brothers and sisters marry to keep that bloodline pure. And man, they had some strange looking folks there.
They really did. And I want to read this from this book. This is another book. And I want to also, I forgot to tell you this, the guy who wrote this book, his name is Lawrence Gardner. And a lot of you are familiar with Lawrence Gardner. He was a 33rd degree Freemason. He was director of antiquities for Scotland. And he was also a genealogist for the royal families and for the dukes and all of these different people. He did their genealogies. And he has the list of genealogies here in this book. And so I want to read from this book. This is the Genesis of the Grail Kings. This other one was the bloodline of the Holy Grail. This one's the Genesis of the Grail Kings. I'm going to read from the end of the first page and part of the second page here. So it says, from the very earliest of recorded times, dragons have been featured at the forefront of cultural lore, where they have been portrayed in various conflicted guises. The ancient Greeks beloved the dragons were benevolent creatures with the ability to convey wisdom and secrets of life, while in contrast, the early Hebrews saw dragons as the meddlesome purveyors of sin. And this is interesting because this gets into the idea of what we were talking about, St. George. So to the Celtic races of Europe, the dragon was the ultimate symbol of sovereignty, hence the Dark Age Pinda dragons, the head of dragons, or king of kings. So the Pinda dragons, the Merovingians, were known as the king of kings. And this is a title that we see in the Bible with another pagan king called Nebuchadnezzar, right? He was called the king of kings, which is interesting. So then we get into this. In AD 494, Pope Gelasius I challenged the Celtic Church by canonizing a certain Bishop George of Alexandria, who was said to have slain a dragon. This violent and unpopular Turkish churchman was reputed to have insulted and persecuted dissenters and was eventually killed by a Palestinian mob in AD 361. He emerged, however, as the famous martyr St. George, whose surrounded legends that grew even more exaggerated. At the Council of Oxford in 1222, it was proclaimed that St. George's feast day should be April 23rd, And in 14th century, he became the Catholic patron saint of England by decree of King Edward III Plantagenet. And so you go on to look at this, the Fisher Kings, and these dragons, as you can see in this book here. Can you see that, David?
Yes, I
can. And you guys, hopefully you guys can see that. Most dragons depicted by these people are wingless dragons almost always, and they're depicted more as sea creatures, which is really, really interesting. But some of them do have dragons. And this, the interesting thing about this dragon comes up majorly in a major way. Now, there's only been, we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't want to get ahead of myself here, David. You got anything to add before I move on to this?
No, just keep it rolling.
Okay, so this, my friends, is, in my opinion, and I'm just going to say it because I'm not giving a definitive. I'm not saying this is for sure the Antichrist. I'm not saying even that he's a bad man. I do not know the man. I think that by houses associations, I can tell that he has his hands in some pretty dark things. But at the same notion, I'm saying that there's a lot of signs that add up to this man right here that I'm getting ready to present to you. And a lot of you have heard it. There's a book called The Antichrist and the Cup of Tea, which I'll be quoting from there. I did read that book. I have gotten probably 100 emails asking me to read the book, asking me if I've read the book. I'm sure you have, David, too. Have you read the book? Have you checked out the show? Look, he's on this show. Check this out. Check this out. And so, you know what? Finally, I did, because with this coronation coming up, it's interesting to look at. It's important to look at because there's a lot of things that have shown up red flags over the years that have forced us to look at this man. So we're looking at King Charles. Now, King Charles was coronated a couple weeks ago, and he was coronated on 6th day of May 2023. Now, if you look over here at his coronation, they chose all these things really, really importantly, and they hid these symbols in there. If you go to the royal website, it'll tell you more about those symbols. One of the more important symbols that I see here, obviously, is the Rosicrucian symbols here, but you see in the middle the green god. The green god that goes way back in lore. David will probably tell you all about the green god. I know that book, well, you mentioned it in the last show. I cannot remember the name of the book. Golden Bough. The Golden Bough talks a lot about the green god. What can you tell us about the green god, David?
Well, this goes all the way back as far as anything goes back. This nature goddess, this nature mother goddess of nature, and it always manifests itself as this green goddess. In the New Age, there was this fellow that the singing group, the Eagles, fell under the influence of this mystic Carlos Castaneda, and they would worship these little green things. They would see that it appear all the time in cornfields. They're nature spirits, they're earth spirits ruled over by the mother goddess, and she is green, by the way. And this ties in prophetically with the pale horse. We've got the Green New Deal, and who would be over the Green New Deal but the Green Mother Goddess? This is the pale horse riding at us full gallop, coming our way, whether you like it or not.
Exactly, man. And a lot of people would say there's no way that King Charles, he's not got the popularity. He's not, look at these guys. But literally, there's only like people like let's, for instance, to say, I've heard people say Gorbachev. I've heard people say it was Netanyahu. I've heard people say it was Obama. I've heard people say all of these different people. But ultimately, none of them had the bloodline to be able to claim to be the Messiah. Not one of them had the bloodline. Prince Charles, King Charles now,
it's doing that glaring thing.
That has ever
had
the bloodline to really fully become king of Europe in whole, because he holds the ancient and the most powerful, most strong and impeccable bloodline of any of the people. And I've looked this up myself. You can see this. This guy, if you look at his heraldry, which we're going to do a little bit later, you can see in his heraldry the beast of Revelation. As far as I'm concerned, this is a perfect picture representation of beast of Revelation, the first beast that comes out of the ocean. Now, another thing about, and I'm gonna explain to you this too. Another thing about the British Commonwealth that I think is very important to know is that there are 195 universally recognized countries. Okay, 54 of those countries are under control of the British Commonwealth. That means they own the land, they own the energy in that land, they own everything under that land, they own the airspace in that land, they own that land. That's why you have places like Queensland and all these different places that they own that property. Now, this is nothing compared to what they control. Now, we talked about earlier, we talked about all of these organizations that are pervasive. We talked about the Freemasons. We talked about the Illuminati. We talked about the Committee of 300. We didn't say Club of Rome, but the Club of Rome. We talked about all of these groups that are super powerful, control the world, but we really never pinpointed who controls them, right? Well, look no further, folks, because the British Commonwealth, the king now controls all of them, because through the Federal Reserve, through the Illuminati, through the media companies, through Tavistock, through intelligence services, through military services, through the deep state, there's one at the top of that. And even bigger and higher than all of those organizations that we mentioned is the Order of the Garter, which you'll find on his crest or on his heraldry. And so, if that's not interesting enough, now, I explained to you this. These are the organizations that are under his control through the Order of the Garter and through the orders that he's a part of. Also, one thing to note is that he is in charge of the Lodge of Freemasonry, 100%. He is the top Freemason in the world. He gets to elect the Grand Master of the lodges worldwide. And through his association, David, with the Order of the Garter, I found this out because I've always wondered. Okay, so there's two factions of Freemasonry. One leads to French Freemasonry, right? The irregular Freemasonry, the one they considered the dark side, I guess you could say. And there's one that represents the English Freemasonry, which is regular Freemasonry. Through the Order of the Garter, he controls both of them, because the members of the Order of the Garter are, in fact, the high orders of the French Freemasonry as well. So not only do they control that, one of the Order of the Garter is a Jesuit, the highest order Jesuit. So you have this Order of the Garter that is the top order that has control over the light and dark. This is like when you see the chessboard, you have the black pieces, the white pieces. And they do this in order so that they can control both sides of the conflict. Because if they can control the control opposition, then they control the entire opposition. They control it all. All the money that's collected from both sides is their money.
So you
And
come
so
up
they
in a
become
month.
very pervasive and all this.
See you in a month, Clyde. Love ya.
NATO, European Union, environmental movements.
There's my cousin,
which
guys.
is
She's
something
going
that's
home.
very important to all of this. The environmental movements. He went on the WF forum saying that we have to do this right now. He's offered himself up as the Messiah. He wants to be the king of the EU. He has said it, that he wants to do this. He's not taking the back seat like his mother, the Queen. His mother completely sat idle for a very long time on purpose, benign presence. Just sat there. She chose not to get involved in politics. She even made it a rule where she's not going to get involved in politics her whole life. But behind the scenes, for a long time, and there's been people that have been documenting this, Charles has been running the show since the 60s. He's had UN meetings, had people out on his yacht, been gathering together a group of people through the world that are ready to accept him as who he is. And this is including the Muslims. He has the order, has the blood to be the Muslim Messiah. He is a direct descendant of Muhammad. He has the bloodline to be the Jewish Messiah. He is from the direct bloodline of King David for more than one or two ways. He comes from King David. He has the bloodline of all
dog doesn't want to go home, guys. Come on, Diesel, you gotta go home.
Including the Chinese empires, including the Indian empires, including all of these. Almost all the presidents, by the way, that we've had in our country that have been elected, almost all of them have linked back to Charles's bloodline as well, which is interesting to know. So there's a very pervasive thing. And now people are like, well, I just don't like the guy. Look, I've been around enough to know this. A guy can go from a zero to a hero in no time, especially if he stops a World War III, stops world hunger, solves the economic crisis, and all of a sudden everybody's living a lot better than they were because all the evil people are scooted off the bucket. And I think he would do that. I think he was the kind of guy that would do that just to prove that he is the Messiah, because all these people are pawns anyway. All of these different organizations are webs, but any of them can be cut off at any point, and he's still got the web going, right? The spider still continues. And so this is the power that this man has. This is not something to scoff at, nor think that this man is nobody. I looked at the history of this man, and he was a tough guy. I mean, he's a man's man. He was a warrior. He was a athlete. He was probably the most educated king that has ever sat on the throne. He is probably the most educated. And he is also the most involved in all of the operations of the Commonwealth of the royal family. So before I go on, David, you got anything you'd like to add?
Well, kind of a truncated overview of the history of secret societies. The Council on Foreign Relations began in England in the late 1800s. They began on the campuses of Oxford and Cambridge University. They were started by Cecil Rhodes, who was from South Africa, and they were called the Round Table Groups.
Yes.
And their purpose was for the English-speaking white people to control the world.
Yep.
It came across the sea. It became the Council on Foreign Relations. Every group we've mentioned, the Bilderbergers come off of the CFR, the Club of Rome come off the CFR. Everything came off it in the engineering of the political control. And Mr. Coleman's book, which I've read that years ago, and it just has stuck with me ever since, that his basic theory is that they have been running this for a long time. The royal family controls it by placing and controlling specific individuals on the boards of these Fortune 500 companies. They're running and manipulating things without even entering into the definitive politics of whatever nation they're in. It's like Rothschild says, I don't care who makes the laws, just so I can print the money.
Yeah.
And the more we look at this and the more we watch what's going on, we see these corporations that are taking the lead and aiding this globalism. And it makes more and more sense as we look what's happening that, boy, this could be actually what we're seeing go on here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is coming from somebody that I there's no way I would bow down and worship this man. This is coming from somebody that studied what's going on here, and David studied what's going on here. This is going to be a hard one because, like, he's literally going to save the world probably. For of course, the Bible talks about him breaking, and double crossing and all that stuff. But he's going to save the world. Like he's that's what he wants to do. If this is the Antichrist, he's gonna it's gonna be hard because he's gonna come. He's gonna get rid of, vanquish a lot of things. He's gonna keep the World War III from happening. He is going to have the credentials, and he's going to do. There's going to be miracles performed by the false prophet. He is going to be. Okay. So this is how we'll know for sure. Now, all of these things are interesting. There's so many more things that we're going to talk about, but ultimately, it talks about a head wound in the Bible. The first beast having a head wound, and then coming back from the head wound. He's healed from the head wound. This other beast out of the earth comes up and restores him, and exercises all the power that he's exercises, causes everyone to worship the image of the beast because his deadly wound was healed. And so we will know when that happens, right? There's a definite there. If you get
Diane, I wonder what the secret is.
If something happens, he gets assassinated or something along those lines, and then
Does
bounces
it say, does
back,
it? Hang on.
then we have an idea because it's talking about one of these heads that's on this beast.
Yeah,
Now,
it doesn't really say what it is.
with this, I told everybody that I would read this book and I would give my review for this book, and I'm going to do that. And I'm not going to go into a too long review. I would say that it's a very good book. I say that the majority of the information in there, I was thrilled to read, to see that somebody had put together some of the information that's in there. Now, looking at it, also there's certain things about it that I think that he may have been a little off on, and that's just my opinion because of his lens of dispensationalism and his ideology about who the church is, who is Israel. His ideology about who Israel is.
Diane, I think Trump's going to go after Biden and all them villains. I think he's going to lock them up. I really do.
I think is off. I think that there's going to be a lot of Jews that accept this false Messiah. A lot of them are going to accept him because he's going to be the one they've been looking for. They denied Jesus. He wasn't the one. So now they're looking for one that comes as a king, saves them, builds the temple, and does all these things. Now, Charles wants to do all those things. In fact, he owns the property. The Rothschilds own the property. The Rothschilds are, and I used to think the Rothschilds were the big dogs, right? I used to really think that. But I started to do some calculating just on land alone and resources alone, without him ever having to lift another finger, and the properties that he owns. The king makes Rothschild looked like a pauper. This man, the Rothschild's a pauper compared to the king. And the king, historically, I was looking at kingships and how they've always used, even back in the Khazars, when they used the Khazars as their money people, they've always used the Jews as their money people. And when I say Jews, I'm using that term loosely because I don't know. There's, plenty of people that have done DNA studies and all of that, and it's really hard to tell what the Jews look like because depending on what part of the world you go to, the Jews look different, right? You go to Ethiopia, guess what? They're black. You go to Germany, they're white. You go to Israel, they're mixture, right? There's all in Spain, they're more of a white color, etc. So when people say, "Oh, you can tell a Jew by looking at a Jew," you can't. You cannot do that. In fact, there's no real DNA marker that shows this person for sure is a Jew because it's never been even through the bloodline.
Hey, Trace, good to see
never
you.
been about only bloodline, right? That anybody could have been accepted into that. And in fact, in the scriptures, it says that a Jew is the one of this one inwardly. It's the one that's had their heart circumcised, the one that follows God, and the children of God is the Israel God. That's, the Bible is very clear on that. The New Testament tells you that real plain and simple. You got to do a lot of twisting to believe that we are not Israel and that we are not part of God's chosen people that the Antichrist will be coming against, by the way. Because we will not accept that, and we will be the enemies. Everybody else is going to accept it. Okay, everybody else is going to accept what happens because he's going to come with accolades. He's going to come with strength and power like nobody's business. In fact, the Bible says that Satan gives him power. Now, looking at this book, he does divulge all stuff. Let me read this verse real quick here, and then we're going to get into it. So I'm going to, being that it's almost time, David, we got 8 more minutes. I'm going to go through a little bit of information pretty quickly, and then I want to open it up to discussion, and we'll continue this later because there's some stuff that I don't want to skim over too fast because I know that when people hear it, they're going to be like, because that's what happened to me. My head was blown. In fact, I've been stuck in books nonstop for the past several days. I haven't been able to stop reading. I haven't even done anything other than that in the past few days. I'm sure that once you hear this kind of stuff, it might be the same for some of you guys. So let me read this. It says, Revelation 13:18. It says, "Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666." Now, this verse says, "Here's wisdom. Let him that understand count the number of the beast." This is implying that somebody is going to have wisdom. Somebody's going to be able to count the number of this beast. Somebody's going to be able to do it. Now, there have been a lot of attempts, a lot of manipulating words, a lot of different stuff to get this number. Well, in this book, The Antichrist and the Cup of Tea, and as well, I've seen other people come to this calculation as well, because you can't not come to this calculation. There is an explanation here. And so I'm going to read from this book on page 57 from Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. And I'm going to show you this chart here that they made. So I'm going to read quite a bit of this to you because I think it's important that you guys understand how this system works, because there's a lot of different systems that people use. Some people use Roman numerals and all these things, but I think it's important that we use the calculation system that they would have used when the scriptures were written. I think that would be what they're talking about, most likely, and it's a continuation of that calculation that still exists today. So the main form of calculating Hebrew numbers, Greek numbers, has been around for a long time, and it's still around. So we can use that. We can definitively know that we're using the right calculation in order to find out what these are. So I'm going to read this. Unlike English, ancient Hebrew and Greek did not use Arabic or Roman numerals to represent numbers. Instead, the characters of respective alphabets were themselves used. The number historically applied to the Hebrew character set, which actually antedate the largely occult Kabbalah, are today called Kabbalic. With these numbers in mind, recall that the saints are told, "Here's wisdom, let him who understands calculate the number of the beast." Despite the arguments of some to the contrary, there is no compelling reason, biblically or otherwise, to believe that a correct identification of the Antichrist through a proper calculation of his name, as spoken of in Revelation 13:18, cannot precede the start of the tribulation period. In fact, the Prince Charles and Antichrist, then this has already been accomplished. So we're going to read here. This book was written when was it published? It was published in the 90s, I believe. Yeah. In the 98. It was by Prophecy House. So he came to this conclusion in 98 by looking at these numbers, as well as other people did. And it says Prince Charles of Wales, the prince's common name and title. Now, this is his common name and title. This is his official title, if you look it up, is the same form, for example, as Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. So he has his title, just like Jesus had a title. Prince Charles of Wales, Messiah, Jesus of Nazareth. And this is how kingships have been named commonly throughout hundreds and thousands of years. So Prince Charles of Wales, the prince's common name and title, is the same form example as Messiah of Nazareth. Unlike a manipulation or even contrived name or title, such as Pope Caesar of Rome, the prince's real-life title not only calculates to 666 using the Kabbalic numbers, but it does so in more than one language. This calculation
That's pretty stunning, isn't it?
Either English or Hebrew, English or Hebrew through a relatively simple procedure. First, respectively applied the 22 Kabbalic numbers, one for each character in the Hebrew alphabet, to the first 22 letters in the English alphabet. Next, because Hebrew has only 22 characters, assign the null value to the last 4 letters in the English, W, X, Y, and Z. Finally, obtain the sum of values corresponding to each letter in Prince Charles of Wales or Modern Israel Hebrew, and it shows the Modern Israel Hebrew here. Now I'm going to show you guys what he came to in this here. So this is the calculation he came to here, and this is the same calculation you get if you type it into the program. It doesn't matter. It's the same. You can do it right now. Go and type in go to like gematria.org and type it in, and you're going to come to the same exact conclusion he came to here in both the English and in the Hebrew, which to me is mind-blowing because not too many people add up to 666, do they, David?
No.
What do you think about that?
And even less add up in both languages. It's hard to just dismiss it as coincidence.
It really is.
Wow.
Man. And this right here, once I saw this was actually enough to get me to
Diane, our 11-year-old girls. We're having a lot of trouble in our country towns with childhood crime as well. There's a big explosion in the country towns on young youth offenders offending.
look further into
It's getting really bad,
because
actually.
if the name doesn't add up to 666, then what are we looking at here, right? If the name doesn't add up to that, what are we even looking at? Now, I'm going to have to get into this part next time we do the show. Now, this is this heraldry. I'm going to give you guys a quick synopsis of this. In the scriptures in Revelation, it talks about 10 crowns, 10 kings. It talks about 7 heads. It talks about a beast with the mouth of a lion, the body of a leopard, and the feet of the bear. Now, there is only one form of heraldry, folks. One form of heraldry. And it is done by a order of people that do this. This is a cult order of people that do this, and there's nobody else allowed to do it. Nobody else is allowed to have this heraldry right here. In fact, the queen didn't have this heraldry exactly. Neither did his father, neither has any other person up to this day been able to put this on their heraldry. Now, the idea of what heraldry is, in fact, your achievements. Now, people talk about the crest. The crest is in the middle, right? In the middle of this thing, you have the crest. In this, you have the garter belt, the order of the garter that I was talking about. You have in this bottom left-hand quadrant here, which this is actually, I had a chart that I'm going to show next time that sums it up into quadrants, tells what each quadrant represents. But just to give it a sum up of this, this lion, if you look up feet of bear in heraldry, that's the foot of a bear. That's not the foot of a lion. Lions only have three toes that are shown, and their feet are different. The body of lions are not slender like this. This is the body of a leopard according to heraldry, and this is right off the heraldry book, the heraldry website. This is right off of their order that it talks about this. And the lion face. So we have the face of a lion, the body of a leopard, the feet of a bear in heraldry right here. We have exactly, if you count every single crown in this picture, you have 10 crowns. Starting at the top, lion up here at the very top, you have a crown. Right below him, you have a crown. To the left, the lion has a crown. To the right, the horse has a crown. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 here right now. We go down in the middle of the crest. We have another crown. That's 5 crowns right there. Then we have another crown here by these 3 feathers. And these 3 feathers represent the dark prince, the first person who ever, or the black prince. The first person who ever got this was the black prince. This is not talking about color either. Then you have one here in the middle. that's over this, which represents another order of knights. And then you have one. Let's see, where are we at here? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry, did I say 10 crowns? I meant 7 to represent the 7 heads. So you have 7 crowns in here total. 1, 2 at the bottom, 1 in the middle over this, 2 being over the dark prince, 1 in the middle of this thing right here, 1 on the horse, 1 on the lion, 1 on the head in the middle, and 1 on the lion on the top. So that's 7 crowns representing the 7 heads. In the middle of the crest, you have lions. And guess how many lions there are? There are 10 of these lions that are in the middle of this crest. And these represent princes and kings over other territories. There's a book that I won't be getting into tonight, but it's very interesting. This is the old book that I got, and it's called There Are Still Kings. And it talks about the 10 royal families of Europe, which is who he wants to take control of. He wants to be the king of all of Europe, by the way, over the 10 families, which I believe could represent that. You also have NATO. You have a lot of different options here, right, that he's in charge of, which is NATO's one of them. But these 3 feathers here, super interesting. If you look at his coronation or you look at his speech, actually, each feather has 6 divisions in it, representing 666. Reading this heraldry from left to right, which is how it's supposed to be written, is the dark prince. It says, "I serve," which is in the dark prince, the red dragon. And at the top of the red dragon, you have a horse, a unicorn that is chained to this red dragon, denoting that the red dragon at the bottom of the helm is the one who is constraining or controlling this unicorn. The chains link all the way up to the crown. Now, interestingly, this horse is a little different than most. It's actually got the pale color. Most of them are super white. If you look at different logos, they're super white in comparison. This one actually, maybe not in this picture, depending on what kind of your color is set at, but it's a pale horse. There's also the representation of the horn that rises up and plucks out 3 other horns. I believe this horn is represented on this unicorn because it talks about the horn having the eyes of a man, right? And this, if you look at the eyes of a horse, this is not the normal heraldry eyes of a horse. This horse has the shape of a human eye, and it also has the whites of the eye showing, which a horse's eyes does not show the whites. And so it does have a human eye there as well. And then you have, so many other things we could get into. We are nearing the end of the show, and we will definitely get into some of these things. One more thing I wanted to show people real quick that I think is important to know about this, because the pervasive element of this network of people that is all over the world also includes our church, right? The church, not the church, maybe the real church, not the Israel of God, but the church in America, the mainstream church, is represented through these TBN. This is Trinity Broadcasting Network. This is their logo. And I'm going to read a little bit about Trinity Broadcasting Network in this book, Antichrist and a Cup of Tea. And then I'm going to give you some chance to comment, and then we'll wrap it up, guys. I know that you don't want me to, and I don't want to, but I know that we have set our limits here, because after a certain amount of time, you don't want to hear me talk anymore. I don't even want to hear me talk anymore. So we're gonna do it while I'm still alive here. Okay, so here we go. So this is on page 225. This is about this whole chapter is actually about Britain's role in breaking down the barrier between the Catholic Church and the English Church, breaking down the Protestant barrier through TBN. And it says their spokespeople include such men and women as Charles Colson, Paul and Jen Krauss, who head the Trinity Broadcasting Network. It says, although sincere in their desire and efforts to serve Christ, and that's up for debate, despite some significant deviations from sound doctrine, they have unwittingly allowed themselves, I don't know if I'd use the word unwittingly either, but anyways, they allowed themselves to be compromised through the direct association with Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. Charles Colson, for example, who, like so many professing Christians, confusedly calls the pagan and now deceased Mother Teresa, who accepted false beliefs as potentially leading to salvation, a Christian, has stated on Christian radio that he received his Templeton Prize for Progress in Religion award money on behalf of Prison Fellowship from the hands of Prince Philip at Buckingham Palace. And it goes on to talk about a meeting with Krause and all of these different things. And if you look at TBN, they also own a Catholic network, right? There's a lot going on here, guys, behind closed doors that we should know about. And I think it's important that we know, because when somebody has a vested interest in what's going on here, and let's say that all we're saying is right here, and I know some of you are skeptical, which you should be. You should look at anything and really see what is the possibilities. But if this is a real possibility, there's a vested interest in everything. This is why so much money is spent on infiltration over ministries, and I know that even in our ministry, we're not even a huge organized religion like Baptists or anything like that. We're not organized like that on purpose, but they've tried to infiltrate us, right? There's been an infiltration that has tried to happen to us several times. David can attest to this happening. This is all too common, and this happens not only in religions, but it happens in businesses all over the world. And so the vested interest, if becoming Antichrist is coming, and I just want to leave you guys with this warning, he's going to make himself look like a Messiah, and he already has been. First off, the church is taking on the pagan rituals of the faith, and they put those together with the Christian rituals, come up with things like Christmas, Easter, which are in fact celebrating the Antichrist. They will fit right in when the time comes. All of those things will fit perfectly into the worship of the beast. They've been doing the rituals for many, many years. They've associated the dates. So when somebody comes up that fits the mold, that's able to do miracles, able to raise from the dead, and that is also able to take control of the entire world and stop the war, Christians all over the world are going to serve this man, because they have already been serving him through many rituals that should have never been allowed in the church. At one time were illegal in our country. The Puritans made them illegal. They were not allowed, but they are now allowed again. People are literally being initiated unknowingly into the order of the beast. And this is my final warning on this tonight. And that's what I wanted to say. David, did you have anything that you'd like to add before we jump off of here?
He still does to this day that he started EWTN, the Catholic Broadcasting, by popularizing this nun. That's insane.
It is.
But it's true. It's absolutely true. And I noticed, and I never did before, on that the horse, it definitely has green shading to it.
It does.
I mean, there's definitely green shading to it. And the more you just step back and look, and we, in Second Estes 11, that just keeps me going too. The three heads of the eagle. Mm-hmm. And this reminds me of the three, it almost looks at the bottom left, their feathers just almost look like snake heads. And on the end of the horse and on the end of the line, you have the three, and off the head there, the two branches with the three. That symbolism also is pervasive.
Yes.
And it is just, I tell you, the Bible says to watch and pray. And now's the time for us to be doing it. Now's the time to watch and pray, to keep your eyes open.
It really is, David. And I think that there couldn't be any better thing to do right now. I think that if this is true, if these things that I'm presenting tonight are in fact true, which I'm not saying, I'm not going to say this Prince Charles, King Charles.
It's pretty solid evidence, though.
This is the Antichrist. I'm not saying that because I don't know. I do not know. Until more things happen, it's hard for me to say. But what I will say is this, that'll intrigue you a little bit as well. There's some that say the year 30 AD is the death of Jesus. Some say it's 33 because there was an eclipse that happened both of those years that would align with his death. We are almost exactly 2,000 years in the future from that. We are almost exactly 2,000 years. If it happened in 2030, or it happened in year 30, in 2030, it will be 2,000 years. Now that date keeps popping up, 2030, the 2030 agenda.
Oh boy.
If in fact the Antichrist has been kinged, then 7 years from now, keep that number in mind, will be 2030, 7 years from now. Now, there's a speech that's planned to be made in December where he will address the world and with the green agenda. He will address the world, and he will probably give people an opportunity. And if he does address the green agenda, and if somehow he is given power, then look out. It's very possible that this could be the beginning of the 7-year tribulation. And I don't know for sure. I'm just a guy in this world that likes to read and likes to hear from God, do the best that I can to give his word out. And I'm not perfect. I don't know everything, and neither is David, but we sure do our best to at least warn people and at least get them on the right track of looking. Hopefully, even if this guy's not the guy, at least you looked, at least you seen. What's up, guys? I hope you enjoyed that. And for those of you that don't know, I did get a chance to talk with Tim Cohen on a broadcast, and I hope to do it again someday. So make sure to check that out over on NYSTV. This next episode is titled The Seven Angels of the Apocalypse, which is perfect for trumpets, because in the book of Revelation, we have 7 angels that blow 7 trumpets, ushering in the end of the world as we know it.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Who was able to make war with him.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. My name is David Carrico, and it is my great honor to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn to the NYSTV studio for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, the 7 seraphim of the apocalypse. We're going to be taking a close look and a deep dive into the hierarchy of the satanic kingdom. Could be a little scary, but it's okay, because Jesus has made a spoil of them openly at the cross and put them under our feet. So get ready. It all starts right now, because we are now
live. What's up, guys? It's so good to be here again and get to say those words. Let us know where you guys are from in the chat or in the comment section if you get to watch this later. We're so excited to be presenting the show. As David said, this is going to be something that I think all of you who are really intent on understanding human civilization, all of the civilizations before us, and just where we are at in the whole scheme of things, this is going to be one, especially for you guys, and this is exciting for me as well. Let's do it.
Enoch 69. Enoch chapter 69, the 7 seraphim of the apocalypse. And one of the things, in my opinion,
another natural disaster, Diane. Mary's getting hit with them bad, aren't they?
Put your mic a little closer to your mouth there, David, just a little bit. Kind of bend it in there. There you go. Sorry about that.
All right. Is that better?
That's much better.
All right. In my opinion, one of the things that is undertaught and really not taught at all is the complexity of the satanic kingdom. And most people, the most you'll hear about, well, we've got fallen angels, demons, and of course there's Satan. And that's about all you hear about. But there is tremendous complexity. And in the scripture, Jesus spoke of the Satan's kingdom. And in Matthew chapter 12, in verses 25 and 26, and Jesus knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And Jesus spoke of the kingdom of Satan as a kingdom that has structure, hierarchy, and of which Satan is at the top. Now, last week, or not last week, but the last midnight ride we did in 2 weeks ago, where we talked about the 68th chapter of the book of Enoch, we talked about the horrific judgment that the fallen angels fell under. It was so horrific that it even horrified the angels that did not fall. We talked about them being boiled in hot metal and water in the heart of the earth. And we're going to get a deeper look as we open up in the 69th chapter of the book of Enoch. It lists those angels that fell under that horrific judgment that were being horrifically punished. And after this judgment, they shall terrify and make them to tremble, because they have shown this to those that dwell on the earth. And behold, the names of those angels, and these are their names. The list of them is Samjaza, the second, Artwika, the third, Armin, the fourth, Korkabel, the fifth, Turalet, the sixth, Rumja, the seventh, Danjau, the eighth, Nerquelt, the ninth, Barquel, the 10th, Azazel, the 11th, Armos, the 12th, Bartagal, the 13th, Basajalt, the 14th, Haniel, the 15th, Terrell, the 16th, Semasiel, the 17th, Jetrel, the 18th, Kumiel, and the 19th, Terrell, the 20th, Rumiel, the 21st, Azelt. Now, or Azazel. Now, these were the angels
Wow.
that fell under the horrific judgment. 21 of them are listed.
Okay, this will be interesting because I've never heard this before.
They fell under the judgment that was so horrific that it even made the angels that did not fall horrified. And we need a little more of that, John, before we move on. Okay. Now, what we want to look at now in verse 3, it says, and these are the chiefs of their angels, and their names, and their chief ones, over hundreds and over fifties and over tens. Now, the book of Enoch in chapter 69, beginning in verse 3, it begins to tell us about the chiefs in the angelic hierarchy that are over these 21 angels that fell under this horrific punishment. So we're peeling back the onion a little bit here. Yes, we know that from scripture that the watchers fell. We know from the book of Enoch that they came down in the days of Jared on Mount Hermon. But now we're seeing even more. We're seeing what transpired with the fallen realm that were the chief ones over these 21. And in Ezekiel 38, when it talks about the chief, the angels that were the chiefs over these 21 angels, it's just like in the book of Ezekiel, says, and the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshish and Tubal, and prophesy against him. Gog is a prince, just like in Daniel 10, the prince of Persia, the prince of Grecia, the prince of Rome, and so on. Gog is a satanic prince, and he is a chief over this Meshish and Tubal. This is what we're seeing, the same concept in Enoch 69, that we're going to have unveiled the chiefs over the angels that fell, and we'll understand what transpired and what took place to cause this to come about. Now, what we're going to see in the book of Enoch, 5 Satans are going to be revealed. And we're going to put that together with 2 Satans or seraphims from scripture. And we're going to get the understanding of the 7 seraphims of the apocalypse. Now, we'll look here at Enoch chapter 40 and verse 7. And I heard the 4th voice fending off the Satans. Notice that's plural. And forbidding them to come before the Lord of spirits to accuse them who dwell on the earth. Now, that immediately brings a picture to our mind, doesn't it? We know that Satan is the accuser of the saints before the throne. But now in the book of Enoch, we find there are more Satans that function in the very same way that Satan functions. Now, this is a book that was a real life changer for me. I've had this book since the 70s, and it is the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha of the Old Testament in English by R.H. Charles, and it gave me my first glimpse of the book of Enoch decades ago. And on the scripture that we just read in Enoch chapter 40 and verse 7, Brother Charles has a footnote about these Satans that are mentioned that come against and accuse the saints before the throne. He says these are ruled by a chief, Satan, to whom the watchers became subject and so fell. So there's not just one Satan, but there is a whole class of spiritual beings called the Satans. And this is what we see in scripture spoken of as the seraphim. And the watchers fell and became subject to Satan and the Satans. And he goes on, he says, they had access into heaven, they tempted to evil. And he references the text in Ezekiel or in Enoch chapter 69, verses 4 and 6. And they accused. So we see here a much deeper look into the fallen realm when we found out, well, we all know about Satan, but we didn't know about Satan's. And in Enoch 53 and 3, this is the order as it's given in the book of Enoch. Satan is number one. It said, for I saw all the angels of punishment abiding there and preparing all the instruments of Satan. It shows Satan as the leader of this fallen hierarchy in Enoch 54 and 6. And Michael and Gabriel and Raphael and Phanuel shall take hold of them on that great day and cast them on that day into the burning furnace.
Okay, so 5 angels have got the power to throw all these devil's angels into hell. That's pretty interesting, the numbers.
That the Lord of spirits may take vengeance on them for their unrighteousness in becoming subject to Satan and leading astray those who dwell on the earth. So this is the picture in the book of Enoch. We have Satan, the big guy. We have other Satans, and then we have the watchers that became subject unto them. And in future lessons, we'll get into the details of just exactly the role that these Satans played in tempting the angels to fail. It wasn't just their idea. They didn't come up with the idea of mating with human women on their own, but Satan used these other seraphim, the very highest order in the fallen realm, to entice these angels to cohabitate with human women. Now we know the scripture here in Revelation 12. And there was war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought with his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found in heaven any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. He wasn't cast out of the earth, but he's cast into the earth. Very specific, the way scripture states it. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength in the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And one of the things that is so heartbreaking, most of the people that profess Christianity, they believe that they are taking the strongest punch Satan has to throw right now. But the Bible tells us that he is going to be cast back into the earth. And the scripture in Job, which most of us are familiar with, it gives us the scenario of what took place before the throne of God. Now, there was a day when the sons of God came also to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and from the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. And this is what takes place with Satan as the accuser. He accuses me, he accuses you, he will try to drag our sins out from under the blood. And many people will try to tell you that this has already taken place, but it is such an easy thing to prove, and every child of God can prove this by experience. Every born again believer knows and feels the accusations against Satan. Can I? If you feel that, just raise your hand. What child of God does not have the accuser want to drag their old sins out from under the blood and constantly beat you up over every failure that you've had and tell you you're no good, you're not worthy, and all of this? And we're not, but Christ's blood makes us worthy. Now, that alone proves that the accuser of the brethren is still accusing us before the throne, and he's going to be cast into the earth, and it's going to roll, and it's going to get serious, and his angels are coming back with him. And in Revelation number 9, which we were talking a little bit about last week, we'll see the abyss opened, and there's going to be some little critters come out. And this is going to get real interesting. And it's a shame, just such a sad scenario that the modern prophetic scenarios are totally setting people up for a fall. That none of this is anything that's even on the radar screen of hardly anybody that isn't listening to FOJC or now UCTV. Now in Ephesians 1:20, it says, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead and set him at his own right hand in the heavenly places. That specific phrase in the Greek is used again in Ephesians 6:12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. The same exact Greek phrase that we have in Ephesians 1:20. This is where the warfare takes place, at the right hand of God. It is still taking place there right now. Satan is accusing you at this very moment. And what we see from the book of Enoch, he has 5 little helpers that we're going to be learning a lot about. And this is something that can be very, very beneficial to you in your spiritual warfare and in your prayer life, because it is a spiritual reality. Now let's look at this article from the New Interpreter's Dictionary, and let's read the article on seraphim. And we're going to be seeing from the canon in the scripture that Satan was a seraphim, and we're going to be identifying another seraphim from scripture, and we're going to be combining that with 5 seraphim from the book of Enoch to give us 7, the 7 seraphim of the apocalypse. Now, this article from the New Interpreter's Dictionary on seraphim, it says heavenly creatures, often called seraphim, with 6 wings and human voices, serving as divine attendants in Isaiah's throne room vision, Isaiah 6:2, 6, and 7. Elsewhere, the Hebrew word designates a serpent. Now, this is where it's going to get real interesting. The word seraphim is used interchangeably with serpent, and it gives 2 references, Numbers 21:8 and Isaiah 14:29. These are both scriptures that we're going to be looking at before we're finished with our study here. Now, we're going to look at a text that we read in a previous Midnight Ride, and then I'm going to read another text that will reinforce this text that we've never read before from another non-canonical source. And this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, from the Testament of Amram, who was Moses' father. And it says this: I saw watchers in my vision, a dream vision, and behold, 2 of them argued about me and said, They were engaged in a great quarrel concerning me. I asked them, "You, what are you?" Thus they answered and said to me, "We have been made masters and rule over all the sons of men." And they said to me, "Which of us do you choose?" I raised my eyes and I saw one of them. His looks were frightening like those of a viper, and his garments were multicolored, and he was extremely dark. And afterwards I looked, and behold, by his appearance and his face was like that of an adder, and he was covered together and over his eyes. Now, what is, and I never made this association before, but this multicolored appearance of this viper. We have the viper, and we're going to have the viper show up in more text. And he was multicolored, and I never associated this before this study with the rainbow. The serpent represents the rainbow. There was a movie out called The Serpent and the Rainbow. This was about, we talked this before, it was about voodoo rituals that actually created zombies and brought them back to life with a zombie power. And the serpent is representative of this rainbow, and it is a bridge in many aspects and many ways of thinking, and it repeatedly is connected with the viper in these non-canonical texts. Now, here's another very interesting text here, and it's in the Testament of Abraham, which is another non-canonical book. And in the 17th chapter, and this is found in the 14th verse, it talks again about these serpentine qualities of these fallen entities. And he showed Abraham 7 fiery heads of dragons and 14 faces, one of most brilliantly burning fire and great ferocity, and a dark face, and a most gloomy viper's face, and a most horrible precipice, and a fiercer face than an asp's, and a face of a frightening lion, and a face of a horned serpent, and of a cobra. Now, in the footnote of this book, which was translated by James Charlesworth, it says that the Greek word in this text that is being translated is the basilisk. And the basilisk is a very, very interesting little critter indeed. Now, this is a book called The Grand Medieval Bestiary, and these bestiaries are books about beasts. And this one comes from the 1300s, and they're basically just beautifully drawn art pictures of animals and the explanation about the animals. Now, in this one, it's very interesting, and I've got 2 of them here I'm going to look at. And in these old bestiaries, it talked about the basilisk just like it was a real creature, and the Bible talks about the basilisk, and it's also referred to as the cockatrice, and it refers to this creature as a real entity. So I'm kind of believing that the basilisk is real, and I believe they're still around, and I believe we're going to see some more of these before it's over. Now, it says in this bestiary about the basilisk, it says that it was born of the confluence of 2 traditionally opposed worlds, the earth and the heaven, with the front of a chicken and the tail of a reptile, as seen in the bestiary of the transitional version in St. Petersburg. This unnatural birth reconciling 2 animal realms, seen as polar opposites. Now, what we have here is something that's unnatural. God did not create the basilisk, but the basilisk is a chimera. The scripture has a lot to say about not mixing kinds of animals, doesn't it? And we see here in the basilisk a hybrid, a chimera. And I believe that this was a purposely genetically modified creature by Satan And I think it has played a huge role in the past, and I think it's going to play a role in the future. Now, this is a very, very creepy picture. It comes from the 1300s, and it's in this bestiary. And this is supposedly Jesus. And it's Jesus standing on top of the basilisk. And it's just one of the many images that come from the Middle Ages and even over that repeatedly showed and showed that their belief that this basilisk was indeed a real creature.
You know, David, if I can cut in here, one of the
Cut
things
in all you want, absolutely.
one of the things that struck me that out of all this we're talking about here is this rainbow serpent, on which I know you're going to talk more about. But you know, in our studies about psychedelics and DMT and ayahuasca, this is the entity that almost every single person that takes ayahuasca sees when they enter in this hallucinogenic state, or when they enter into this other realm. This is also interesting because America, according to Manly P. Hall, was named after the land of the plumed serpent. And we see this symbology all over the world, showing us that at one time these entities did rule, in fact, rule over the land, it looks like.
Absolutely. We're going to be looking, before we're done, of the Nagas in the Indian lore. And these things were real. And after, it's going to be very soon, there's not going to be a lot of people arguing that they're not real, because they're going to be showing back up. Now, this is another bestiary. This bestiary here that I'm going to read from. Okay, well, I tell you what, since that slide's there, we'll just put this in right here, because we're going to develop this. Now, this is the throne chair of the Pope. This is where Pope Francis sits in the St. John Lateran Cathedral in Rome. And there on the bottom of his throne, he has the basilisk. Now, might this be a clue for anybody? I think it might be. And, you know, just like we said, there's a lot more. There's a lot more we're going to show you. But there's the little basilisk on the throne's chair of St. Francis at his in the St. John's Lateran Cathedral in Rome. Now, this
I must not have the picture, David.
okay, well, I'll just go ahead and read this.
You can show it up to the camera, though.
Okay, this is from another bestiary. This is even older. This is called the M.S. Bodley manuscript in 764. That's really back there, and there's just some beautiful art in it. And I'll just read a little from what they say about the basilisk. It says the basilisk is 1/2 foot long with white spots. And notice they just talk about these like they're real, because they are. The basilisk is 1/2 foot long with white spots. He lives in dry places like the scorpion. If he comes to water, he poisons it so that those who drink get hydrophobia and are struck with panic. The hissing snake is the same as the Regulus. That means the king. Killing by hissing before he bites or scorches. But the basilisk signifies the devil. The basilisk signifies the devil who openly kills the heedless sinner with his venom. It was commonly known that the basilisk, what represented the king serpent, which was the devil. So yeah, let's put one of them on the throne of a religious leader. Now, St. Peter's Church is called a basilica. Now, this is just, you don't even have to read this really. Where do you think the word basilica comes from? Oh yeah, it comes from the word basilisk. This can be proven with any dictionary. And right here in this Webster's Third International Dictionary, it says basilica, also from the Latin and the Greek basilisk, basilias, basilisk king. The word basilica comes from the basilisk. And if I could show here, well, and I'm not going to hold it up, but in the diagram of what constitutes a basilisk, there's a 666 all over. all over it, a 666 in the layout of the basilica. Now, let's do this. Let's take our religious leader and let's put a basilisk on the bottom of his throne, and let's build churches, and let's name it after this demonic serpent that represents the devil. Yeah, that's what we need to do. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And the basilicas are the best of the best of these cathedrals that the Catholics have, and it comes absolutely from the word basilisk. Now, we've also had this on here before also, and this is the auditorium at Rome. And you can see the snake eyes right here in the auditorium. And when the Pope sits and speaks, he's right in the mouth of the snake.
Wow.
So, yeah, let's put a basilisk chimera serpent on our throne chair. Let's call our churches basilicas, and let's just do this. Let's just have him sit right in the mouth of this serpent. Now, I just appeal to our Catholic friends here. You know, there's nothing veiled here. I mean, this is so out in the open. There's no way that you could go into that auditorium and not know this represents a big, huge snake. There's pictures of this that are just phenomenal. Now, I don't know what more we can do, but to openly expose this and just plead with you in the name of Jesus, get out of this. It's going to destroy you. It's going to destroy you. And when a man can get up there and stand in the mouth of this snake and the people will go along with it, what could, I mean, there's no limit to what this man could not do in service to Satan. And the masses of the people just go right along with it. This is hypnotic brainwashing of the nth degree. And we see the very same thing in non-Catholic churches. I can't call them Protestants anymore because the Catholics have stopped calling Protestant churches Protestant. They call them non-Catholic because they're not protesting anything anymore. So they don't even need to use the word. But Kenneth Copeland, who big charismatic leader, one of the King prosperity pimps, he had Pope Francis on the big screen, and actually Pope Francis dialed in to be remotely a part of one of Kenneth Copeland's conferences. And Kenneth Copeland went so far as to act like he's cutting his wrist and putting his own blood into the communion cup for a communion service. Now, for anybody that can't figure that out, that is rank demonic blasphemy. And when people will just go along with the stuff like the Pope in the snake's mouth, Kenneth Copeland acting like he's putting his own blood in the communion cup, they're set up. They're ready for everything. They are ready to swallow the whole thing, hook, line, and sinker. They're headed for the last go round. And I tell you what, once again, I plead and I implore you, get out of that demonic mess before it's too late. It's going to destroy you. Absolutely going to destroy you.
Yep.
Now in Psalm 91:13, thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Now let's go to Septuagint and let's look at the Septuagint, which I will use as a commentary. And here our friends in the Septuagint sees the basilisk. It says, thou shalt tread upon the lion shall prostrate at thy feet, and thou shalt surely put thy feet upon his neck. And the Israelites, and that is not right, because in the Septuagint that says basilisk, but never mind, check that in the LXX.
Let me check it, yeah.
And you'll find that does say basilisk.
What translation I got that from? I thought I got it from the Septuagint, but
oh well. All righty, let's go to the next one.
okay, yeah. It should say they also tread upon the asp and basilisk. I must have got the wrong verse there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And in the Septuagint, just Psalm 91:13, it does say the basilisk.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay, it
Read
says-
that.
Okay. It says, "Thou shalt tread on the asp and basilisk, and thou shalt trample on the lion and the dragon. For he has hoped in me, and I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name." That's interesting because all of those animals listed there in the LXX are exactly the ones that are on the throne at his feet there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly that representation. And, it's not that hard to figure out. Not that hard to figure out. And at the very least, in the Septuagint, which I would use credibly as a commentary, they certainly believed that the basilisk was a real creature and a real creature to deal with. And they were right about that. And in Luke chapter 10 and verse 19, Jesus said, "Behold, I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you." This is the spiritual authority that is given by Christ to the believers to tread underfoot these creatures. We have to understand that when it talks about treading upon serpents and scorpions, there's more than just a spiritual meaning there. If you look at Revelation chapter 9, serpents and scorpions come out of the abyss when it's opened, and also chimera creatures that are like these basilisks. Now, here in the 14th chapter of the book of Isaiah, in the first half of Isaiah 14, we're all familiar with Isaiah 14:12. "O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning?" But in the last part of the 14th chapter of the book of Isaiah, not nearly as many people are familiar with that. And this deals with the Assyrian. Now, it says in Isaiah 14, beginning in verse 24, "The Lord of hosts hath sworn, saying, Surely as I have thought, so shall it come to pass. And as I have proposed, so shall it stand, that I will break the Assyrian in my land, and upon my mountains tread him underfoot. Tread him underfoot. Then shall his yoke depart from off them, and his burden depart from off their shoulders." The same language Jesus talked about, treading him underfoot. This is interesting because in verse 9, we have the Assyrian, and we talked a lot about the Assyrian in past lessons. In Ezekiel 31, it talks about the Assyrian being in the Garden of Eden. In the 10th chapter of Isaiah, it talks about the Assyrian being the destroyer. And in Isaiah 14:29, we see the Assyrian associated not only with the cockatrice, but with the seraphim. "Rejoice not thou, whole Palestinian, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken," referring to the Assyrian. "For out of the
Hey,
serpent's
boss,
root
good to see you, mate.
shall come forth a cockatrice or basilisk, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent," which is the Hebrew word seraphim. So we have a progression here. If we could, let's go back. Let's look at that just a little more if we can, John. We've got something going on here. We have serpent, cockatrice, seraphim. It starts with the serpent. And as I said before, I believe with all of my heart, it's obvious this cockatrice was not one of the creatures that was created by the Father, but Satan, I believe, genetically modified and blended the chicken and the reptile to come up with the cockatrice. And this will be a vehicle toward providing a body for the seraphim. We've got serpent, cockatrice, seraphim. It's a progression, and I believe that it is a progression of genetic manipulation. It's just like what the scripture said of Jesus, that a body thou hast prepared me. And I believe that Satan is preparing a body and bodies for these entities that are going to be released and are soon going to be amongst us. Now, in Numbers chapter 21 and verse 6. It says, "And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died." Now we see the fiery serpents showing up again in the 21st chapter of the book of Numbers. Now in verse 8, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Make thee a fiery serpent." Now that word is seraphim in the Hebrew. "Make thee a seraphim and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live." Now in the 9th verse, "And Moses made a serpent of brass." If you look that up in your Strong's Concordance, this is the Hebrew word nakhash. So the Lord tells Moses, make a seraphim and put it on a pole. Moses takes a nakhash. Moses was not being disobedient, but the serpent, the crawly snake, is the sign of the seraphim cursed. The seraphim was cursed, and it became a nakhash. And this shows us in Scripture that not only do we have the Assyrian is a seraphim, but also that Satan is also. Now let's read a little more from our bestiary here, and let's look at this other creature that we keep seeing showing up, and that's the viper. And that is the viper. And I'll read here, and this is actually from the Bodley manuscript. And it says here, it says the viper is so called because it gives birth under duress. For when its belly feeds the pangs of birth, its offspring do not await their natural release in good time, but bite through the mother's body and break out, killing the mother. And I'm not gonna read some of this text here because this is a family show, but it actually talks about the way that the viper mates, and both the mother and the daddy viper die during the mating ritual. And it goes on to say, St. Ambrose says that the viper is the most evil of all creatures, more cunning than all other serpents. It is overcome by sexual desire, and it goes to the seashore and seeks out an eel. Now, here again, the viper is associated with the mixing of the species in unnatural ways. It says it hisses to attract the eel, to invite it to its conjugal embrace. The eel does not refuse, but grants the poisonous snake the mating it seeks. And both the basilisk and the viper, they are connected with this mingling of the animal genome. And there is a picture here of the mating ritual of the viper. And I'll hold it up here. There are 666s all over that. And I'll hold that up to see if you can see it. But the 666 is all over this ancient medieval drawing of the mating ritual of the viper there. Now this is the World Book of Knowledge, and there's a very interesting article here about the viper. Now this was a set of encyclopedias from 1929, and it talks about, it says here under the article viper, the so-called pit viper found in America is distinguished by a deep pit between the eye and the nostrils, which is connected with the brain by a well-developed nerve. So we've got a big dent here between its eye, and it's connected by a huge nerve to the brain. Well, they have tried to figure out what this is all about, and it says here in the article, some observers believe that it is the organ of a sixth sense, and that man may never hope to understand it because he has no such sense himself. They actually believe that this nerve, that is the huge thing between the eye and the brain and the viper, is some kind of a spiritual conduit to the spiritual world. Well, my question is, I wonder who the little viper is talking to. I wonder who the viper is in communication with. Could it be possible, and indeed it is, that these fallen creatures, and I believe that we have the basilisk and maybe even the viper, that were genetically created by Satan? And we're going to look at another entity here, a reptile, I believe, could be a genetic corruption. Could it be that these things have a communication device with Satan where he can control them, just like we would have the control in one of the AI scenarios? It certainly is at least possible.
Well, it looks like that's what happened in Genesis, right?
Yeah, kind of looks like that's what happened. And it's just like in the movies where you've got all the little drones go out and they're controlled by headquarters. These are like Satan's drones. And I think literally that we could have these creatures that are going to be all over the place that can be directly controlled by Satan. Now that could just get real frosty, couldn't it? Now this is the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and Rex stands for king. Basilisk was called the king lizard. The Tyrannosaurus Rex is the king of dinosaurs. This thing was all kinds of nasty. It was huge. It was fast, and it would eat you quickly. And the interesting thing one of the many interesting things, I don't believe God created that. I believe that this is a genetic modification. And the people that study Tyrannosaurus rexes, if you read articles about it, there are mysterious holes in the head of the T-Rex. And there are different theories. Some say, well, maybe they breathe fire. They don't know. But I believe that the T-Rex is another example that is a genetically created entity that was able of direct communication and control by Satan.
It's interesting looking too, the little arms. I've always wondered, because a lot of times when you see dinosaur tracks, they look like they could be from a bird as well. The tracks on the Paluxy River, the ones that we cast there, me and my son, they look like giant turkey feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I could imagine this thing with his little arms, those actually, because chicken wings, they have the little small arms. If they were to find just the bones without the feathers, man, that would look like that could be a good place for little chicken wing feathers there.
Yeah. And it looks, you can just see, the more you think about it, the distinct possibility of that being the very thing. And we talked also in the past, we talked about Leviathan and Behemoth, which scripture says were created by God, but then there are non-canonical references about them being separated, that Leviathan and Behemoth were separated. Well, why were they? We don't know, but I think it's very possible and almost even obvious that there was genetic corruption and things that were not natural going on there. And perhaps this is why Leviathan and Behemoth were separated, because this could be the origin of this.
But you got to admit, a T-Rex's teeth, they're meat eater teeth. They're not vegetarian teeth. You look at the elephants where they eat vegetarian, their teeth are really big and flat. Where Tyrannosauruses, they got all the fangs everywhere.
Satanic manipulation of the human genome. And we can see a purpose in it. It was the purpose for being able to have entities Satan could directly control, and also to create bodies that these fallen entities could inhabit. Now,
interesting, David, an interesting thing to denote here too about the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Tyrannosaurus comes from the word tyrant. Rex in the Latinist means king. So like you have like a tyrant king. This is what the words mean. Interesting.
Yeah. We might have a tyrant king coming. And We might see that tyrant king take a seat on the basilisk chair, mightn't we? And give us a little speech right out of the serpent's mouth. Yeah, it's just amazing. Now, this is Man, Myth, and Magic. This was an encyclopedia of the occult published in the 70s. And it's got an article here about the serpent. And I want to read a little bit here. It says that, and it talks about, like John said, there's serpent people all over all of the cultures. And it talks about the Nagas. It says the later Hindu myths of semi-divine beings with serpent bodies called the Nagas. In many folk tales, the Nagas act beneficently, and a female Naga or Nagini may often marry a mortal. And these are pictured, I'll show you a little picture here of this, if you can see it. They're multicolored, kind of like a rainbow, kind of like the multicolors of the vipers that we keep hearing about. And it says the Nagas were semi-divine beings with serpent bodies. Sometimes they were beneficent, but if they were harmed, they were vengeful and terrible. And these are seen in the Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia. If you've ever studied that,
Oh, right.
they are
Okay.
just absolutely
Nailed
fearful
it.
looking. And here's a couple pictures of the Nagas that John has come up with here for us. And I mean, some of these pictures of the Nagas, they're just absolutely off the hook. But we see the whole thing there, don't we? We have the female serpent, and the whole thing is just right there. You can see it right in the symbolism. It really needs no explanation. And that this female Naga or Nagini, she would often mate with human men. So we see the sons of God taking the daughters of men. We kind of have the reverse scenario of that here. We have these female Nagini who in the Hindu myth would mate with human men. Now, we see the bright colors. We saw them on the pictures. If you look at this drawing, oh boy, look at that bad boy right there. Yeah, check that bad boy out. That looks something right out of a movie, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, man, that's freaky looking. I can't help but when I see these things, just think of. So let me go back to this picture over here. So, you know, the headdress of the pharaohs are, you know, because I've seen several of the Nagas. They look like this, but they also have this big kind of serpentile headdress, kind of like the pharaohs. They have their headdress almost looks like a serpent's head, and they have the place where the third eye. I don't have a picture of the pharaoh's headdress, but it reminds me 100% of this, and the idea of the viper with the little space in between its eyes. You know, all of their headdresses have the little space with like the third eye looking thing, and they knew all about this before we did, didn't they?
Now, did our good Hindu people, did they read the Bible? Why does this monster reptile have 7 heads? You know, it's the beast with 7 heads, isn't it? The dragon with 7 heads. Well, why do the Hindus know about that? Because there really is a beast with 7 heads. Yeah. There really is. And this is just unbelievable. And this is at the Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia, which is aligned with the ley lines. Graham Hancock in Heaven's Mirror talks a lot about this temple. There's all kinds. We talked about the numerical 72. The number 72 is all over this Angkor Wat temple in Cambodia. I mean, that is a bad boy. And you see it all there. Notice here right in the middle, we've got a little spiral. We got like a portal, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's all right there for you. And here we see the symbolism portrayed in the Hindu and the Indian people. It gives us the Genesis 6 scenario, right down to this beast and the dragon with 7 heads. It's all right there.
Yeah.
Now, this is amazing to me, and I say that all the time, but it is. You just can't make this stuff up. But we see a lot about the rainbow now, don't we? The rainbow, since Barack Obama lit the White House up, has taken on a whole new symbolic meaning. And it says here, continuing on here, this is in the Man, Myth, and Magic Encyclopedia. It says, but in myth and symbol, rainbows are also often considered to be snakes. Rainbows are considered to be snakes. And there are drawings of pictures with the rainbows actually as snakes. There's a lot of them. And it says the concept can be found in ancient Persian myth, in folk tales of Brittany, in Australia, in Australian Aborigine myth. In Australia, the rainbow snake is an especially important deity, a culture hero, and a creator with wide fertility implications. Some of our
That's true, guys.
Australian friends, if you're out there, and I know you're out there, we've got people listening in Australia, you might comment on this because this is a big thing in Australia, the rainbow serpent. There's a whole occult culture around this rainbow serpent that comes from Australia. So we go beyond in our serpent rainbow symbology. We've got an actual, the concept of the crossing over. And of course, the rainbow with the Father, this was the covenant with Noah. And if you remember what the problem arose over, it was genetic corruption, wasn't it? And this was God's covenant with Noah, the symbol that, and when God started over to purify the human and the animal genome by wiping it all out, and of course, Satan's symbol of the rainbow is about corrupting genetics. It's about changing the human form from one thing into another, corrupting it and polluting it. And this is the deeper implication where in the occult, rainbows and serpents are even represented as identical. Now, for you other old hippies out there, you might remember this. This was a movie that came out in 1970, and Jimi Hendrix did a little music for it. It was called Rainbow Bridge. And you see the whole concept there. You see the arch, the rainbow. You go through the gateway. Oh, here we are. We're going to take some acid and we're going to go through the gateway, the Rainbow Bridge. And it's talking absolutely about the bridge that connects them with that spiritual realm. And this is the whole thing of the serpent. The serpent wants to connect you to that dark spiritual realm. And this is right there in that symbology of the rainbow. Now, this is a book entitled Bridge to Light by Rex Hutchins. This is a Masonic book. It's published by the Scottish Rite. Now, we'll get our good Freemasons here. We'll speak to you a little bit. We talk to, and these all show up, and they're all just together. You have Catholicism, you have Freemasonry, and now you have these apostate non-Catholic churches all coming together in the same little barrel of snakes, pardon the pun. But here we see the same symbology. Well, there we have the river Styx separating our world from the other. You have the rainbow, and here you have the little Swami, doing his little meditation to cross over the rainbow bridge into the other realm. You didn't know Freemasonry was about that bridge to light, did you? And what Bridge to Light is, it's a dumbed down commentary on morals and dogma. And it's published by the Scottish Rite. And in this book, there's rank blasphemy of the Holy Ghost. Explains the serpent, of course, it's got to be the serpent, doesn't it? The serpent swallowing its tail with the hexagram inside of it, with the we've used this symbol before, with the kindly face on top and the dark face on the bottom, showing the duality concept. This is just the same thing. It's the rainbow bridge. It's this rainbow imagery, and it's the serpent. It is the serpent that is making this contact with the other world possible for those that reject the true light and the knowledge of Jesus Christ. Now, here we have something that is very fascinating and interesting to me. These are actual drawings. This one is a cave drawing from Australia, and the other one is from the Wikipedia article, I believe, on the rainbow serpent. And we see here again, and this is from Australia, and there's a strong association with the rainbow serpent. And boy, we even got us little birds back there. That might be Quetzalcoatl, the multicolored serpent. And they got little aprons on, like the Freemasons. They wear their little aprons. And we see from ancient antiquity the serpent connected with the rainbow and with the transporting of people from one realm unto the other.
Yeah, this is really powerful myth, and in the Norse religion as well, they believe that the rainbow bridge, they call it Bifrost, takes them to the afterlife, Valhalla, or wherever they go, Ragnarok, I guess. No,
Asgard.
Yeah, Asgard, that's it. And then also the shamans believe the rainbow bridge as well. Like, there's a lot of different ones, but you name it. But those two definitely tie in together. And the Hindu mythology, the shaman mythology, Norse mythology, they're all super connected in such a major way. I don't think people realize how connected all these pagan religions are. I know we've done so many different topics on showing the connections of all of the different serpent religions, but it's interesting because out of all of the different religions, I believe that only Christianity, the Jews, and the Muslims actually believe that the serpent is the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
The rest of them think the serpent is the good guy.
Yeah, the serpent's the good guy. He's like the government.
Yeah.
We're from the government. We're here to help you. Yeah. And I don't think you could find a culture that, we've talked about this serpent symbology and the worship of the serpent in every ancient culture. You couldn't find one where it is not present. And when you dig deeper, there's this rainbow connection that connects the rainbow with the crossing over into the spiritual realm. And it's the snake. It's the snake that makes that crossing over from one realm to another. It's representative of the rainbow, which also represents genetic corruption. Now, this is a new movie. The Rainbow Serpent, Dawn of the New Age, Beyond 2012, doesn't need much explanation. And they're just like we read in Man, Myth, and Magic that rainbows are associated with the serpent. And there we see that little serpent rainbow right there, and the whole thing. So this is a real deal that people on the dark side of things, they understand it, and they understand it very clearly. And it's something that we need to be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove and figure out, just what these people are doing, because this is a huge thing now. Obviously, the symbology of this rainbow, this is their flag. They proudly wave as they march toward their final march toward the final genetic corruption of the human race. Now, this is the magazine that is published by the Scottish Rite Journal. Now, here again, there's a lot of people that get involved in Freemasonry not because they're trying to be bad. They're trying to be good, and our Catholic friends, they really don't want to worship the devil, and they need to figure this out. And why do they call the Masonic Rite magazine the New Age? It's because it's New Age top to bottom. That's why you saw Bridge of the Light, the Masonic book published by the Scottish Rite. They published this book, The Rainbow Bridge. You've got it all there. You've got the twin columns, the double-headed eagle. You've got the triangle. You've got it all. The Egyptian architecture all over the house of the temple. And in the New Age magazine, and it talks freely about what they believe as the return of the Nordic race. And the return of the Nordic race and the Aryan civilization sounds just a little bit racist to me. A little bit like, who does that bring to mind? Who was that other guy that talked about the Aryans and the Nordics? So yeah, a little Adolf, wasn't it? And we see the whole thing that you just can't miss this stuff if you really have eyes to see and ears to hear. You just look the game plan that's going on here, and you see these groups. You've got Freemasonry, Catholicism. You've got these apostate non-Catholic churches. They're just all about it, and they're going to run back to kiss the ring of Mother Rome so fast. Don't get in the way; they'll trample you. They'll run back to Rome so fast to kiss the Pope's ring. And a lot of these big religious leaders, not to mention any names, but one of their initials is Paul White, the spiritual advisor to President Trump. So this, figure it out. It's not that plain. And I don't know what more we could do to just bet. This is right in your face. This is evil. This is evil. And this is the representation and the symbolic connections we can draw just from looking at just the basic meanings of the word of this satanic hierarchy, these 7 seraphims of the apocalypse. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to be taking a deep dive into this, and we're going to be unpacking the deeper meaning and the deeper symbolism that we see here. It's just, it's bad enough to worship the snake, but now the snake, it represents a little more than that. So we've got a lot of things coming together here, and we're just going to try to continue to unpack it. And I just fear for people. I really do, because people that persist in promoting and being a part of these organizations, it's going to destroy you. It's going to destroy you. And I plead with you in Jesus' name, get out of that mess. It's going to destroy you.
And it really all boils down to people not wanting to believe the actual narrative of the Bible, because it's very clear in the Bible that the bad guy was the serpent. The serpent came, deceived mankind, robbed them of eternal life, robbed them of their dominion, and took dominion himself, tricked the fallen angels, did all of these things that have ruined the world that we live in.
Yeah, I don't think Rainbow meant what it does when Kermit done it. I don't think Rainbow represented what we think it does with Kermit.
Yet there's an
upside
down version of this story that God created this world, and it's evil creation that we shouldn't be in. We're in a prison planet, and Satan snuck in and tried to get us out and tried to show us the path to enlightenment to get us out of here. So it comes down to choose this day whom you will serve, because ultimately there's two stories here that you can either believe one or the other, and all religions stem from either one or the other story. And from what I can tell, most religions stem from one side of the story or the other.
It's exactly what it boils down to.
Well, David, fantastic show, man. There was a lot of people watching and really enjoyed this show. And I know I did as well. It's really nice to be able to go through the Bible and see.
Okay, I'll finish off with the usual.
AGL's Electrify Now is a free online tool that helps estimate your savings by going electric with solar, batteries, electric hot water, induction cooking and EVs. Discover how you can join the change with AGL today.
Whether you're dreaming of a relaxing beach holiday or buzzing city escape, you could...
This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a ton of stuff in this video. It seems like every day there's just more and more insanity happening. We have apparently the potential, the IRS disappearing altogether. We'll get into that story in a minute here. We have, of course, our president calling out Maine. We'll get into that. We're going to get into what's happening in Santa Monica. We have these new documents that just got released that show you that demonic activity was something that they were actually investigating. We're talking about our GOV. We'll get into that. Actually, I'm gonna actually make a video about that in depth. My next video, I'll just kind of touch on it a little bit in this video, but we're going to get into it in great detail in my next video because I thought it was really interesting. But we're going to get into a ton of other things as well. We just had this man confirmed, and no one thought, or a lot of people thought that would have never happened. And we got lots of other stuff to get into. Let's just get going here. Let's start with this here. Apparently, the IRS may not be around that much longer. I mean, can you even imagine that? I mean, it's just insane, some of the stuff that's happening. Commerce Secretary shares his goal to abolish the IRS, literally abolish it and get rid of it completely. More details have emerged about alleged plans to get rid of the Internal Revenue Service and utilize tariffs for the whole economy. His goal is to abolish the. This is amazing. I mean, goodness gracious, I've been paying taxes my entire life. It's just so hard to imagine some of this stuff. They've already apparently gotten rid of 6,000 employees. That's only 6% of the entire workforce, or maybe 7%. There's about 90,000 employees in the IRS. So that thing could completely disappear in the not so distant future. If you can even imagine that. I mean, it's just so hard to imagine. Like never paying taxes again. Does that sound good? I don't know. It sounds pretty good to me. I just paid, actually, I had to pay $6 for my state because I was.
No, this is part of the Great Reset. That's what's going on here, the Great Reset.
A little under, but I got a little bit of money back on the federal. Not very much, though. Then we have Tony going viral once again. Not me, but some other Tony on the internet. He's made these TikTok videos that are absolutely hilarious while he's trying to sell his products. Check this out. Here we go.
Did you know that Abraham Lincoln was queer? Anyways, these signs come with a 3.
That's crazy. Tony keeps getting better.
Okay, if that thing come up to me in a pub when I was a young bloke, I would have put one straight on his chin. Seriously.
Oh no. Anyways, check it out.
How to dress for the female gaze.
Don't care.
I really don't know what's gotten into me recently.
Apparently, it's a lot of food. Anyways,
dude. So that's of course how he advertises his LED lights business, and apparently he's went super viral doing this. He even got on the news and made a little bit of money from selling stuff as a result of it. I mean, it is kind of pretty ingenious, but I thought that was absolutely hilarious. But we do have this interesting story here as well. This is from USA Today. Will he send taxpayers $5,000 stimulus checks? Here's what to know. Apparently, what's going on is they're reviewing the idea of giving 20% of what they save in these cuts. We're talking across all these different sectors of the GOV. Whatever amount they cut total, they're thinking about giving 20% of the savings as a dividend to all the American taxpayers. Now, interesting about that, I mean, some are saying, is this a stimulus check? Is this a refund? I mean, technically it's a refund, if you think of it. He's putting it as a dividend because of how much they're saving, but in reality, it's money we paid in via taxes. So this is literally a refund of sorts. So this is not more money printing. This isn't going to cause inflation, although it will cause some temporary inflation from what I understand, because everybody will have extra money and they'll go out and spend it, and then that will cause prices to rise a little bit. But it will be short term. It won't be the type of inflation we've been seeing over the last few years, which is basically from printing money, which never goes down. Okay, that's completely different. But that's because, of course, they printed way too much money and, of course, spent it on all these wonderful programs that they're finding out and discovering, like the USAID and all those other ones. So now we have this crazy clip and actually, before we get into this crazy clip, this shows you what's going on. Oh my goodness, you're going to want to see this clip. But before we get into that clip, I got to mention first, Food Supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. You're going to definitely want to get this, my friends. They have the old deal back. It's $5.97 for 3 months worth. Link is in the description. You're definitely want to get that if you have not already. Link is in the description. We have so many things happening all at once. You never know what's next. It's wise to be prepared. A link is in the description. Of course, this book here, The Lost Ways, my great-great-grandfather. Live without electricity, how to build a cellar, do things around the house like they did in the good old days. Hundreds of pages illustrated. You're going to need that before something happens. I mean, just think about, honestly, if you had 3 weeks without electricity, what would you do? You would need to have something. And of course, a lot of the time you would be, well, it's just in my region. I could go to my parents' house or whatever. What if everybody doesn't have electricity for 3 weeks? It's going to be crazy. So you're going to definitely want to get this book, get the printed version. I'm about the only person selling it. You're not going to be able to buy it at Walmart after the fact when the power's out. $37 plus shipping, get the printed version. So let's get back to the video. So we have this interesting clip that just came out today. And this is, oh my goodness. Apparently we have one of the governors defying our president in Maine.
I saw this.
And this is pretty interesting what he had to say to her.
Okay, so then today, this apparently just happened.
I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Are you not going to comply?
He calls her straight out. Is she here?
Oh my goodness, he calls her right out, right? Actually, I have the clip over here on X. Let's see if I can get it on the screen. So he's just straight up calling her out, right directly. This is amazing. Check this out.
Although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports, so you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding. Every state. Good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
Oh my goodness. She said, "See you in court." Apparently, she wants to allow or permit men to be, of course, in women's sports. And he's saying, no, you're not allowed to do that. You can if you want, but you won't get any federal funding. She says, "I'll see you in court." And he's like, great. Sounds great.
And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Oh my goodness, man. he's dropping the hammer hard, man. And that's not it. There's like a lot of this stuff going on right now. This is just like barely anything. I mean, there's so many things going on, I can't even cover it all. And I'm the channel that covers like a million things at once. So honestly, I mean, if I was one of these other channels, I'd be making 15 videos a day. I can't do that. It's just crazy. I thought his reaction was pretty hilarious. This is Osmongold. He makes
I saw that, Diane. He was chief of staff or something, wasn't he?
Sort of commentary on whatever's happening. He's a video game dude. Anyway, let's see what he has to say here.
Right there.
I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one.
I feel like if you're going to put your state's funding on the line because you want biological men to compete in women's sports, you deserve to be voted out. And I think it really goes to show what matters to these people. Is that they're...
Yeah, exactly. They don't really seem to be representing their own constituents, their own people in Maine. I mean, goodness gracious. Should be more important to make sure you have federal funding than to have some sort of opinion of yours. Make sure that happens, right? With women, or I mean with men, of course, in women's sports. Anyway, so there's that. But we have, of course, also, oh my goodness, so many crazy things going on. We have this, I saw this video over on Neil's channel here about Santa Monica, California. Ah, such a great place.
I've been following this guy on YouTube. He goes to the American South and he goes to Appalachian Mountains and that. And the poverty, it's stunning, beautiful area. Them Appalachian Mountains, that's beautiful countryside. But the people are all addicted to drugs. It's really bad. And I'm actually losing my voice here, guys. My cousin's been up here all week and we've all been gas bagging. So I'm sort of losing my voice. Yeah, so I follow a guy that goes to the south, and check out all the derelict country towns. Pretty stunning.
Look at that glass smashed. They just say thank you and bye.
What does this say here? 31 great years, Santa Monica Pier, and served millions of amazing customers along the way. It is an honor representing the city. Thank you for everyone that joined us for food, drinks, etc., etc. We miss you all. Apparently, they closed down for good. And of course, what was really weird was looking at that hotel they just showed. Apparently, a lot of people without homes parked in the parking lot or just hanging out in the parking lot in hotels, making it, I mean, obviously that can be good for your customer base.
Bye. In today's video, I'm going to take you around Santa Monica, California.
So of course he goes through there, and I guess apparently he's visiting Santa Monica, but he says it actually is the most crime ridden of all the cities. If you're a resident in Santa Monica, you'll have a 1 in 8 chance of some crime happening to you. I mean, that's.
Lars, he's doing some great things, but I don't know how it's going to end up. Steve Bannon, who knows Trump very well, he done a Nazi salute. So you had Elon Musk do one a couple of weeks ago, and you've had Steve Bannon do one now. So they're doing good stuff, but I don't think it's going to end well.
That was pretty bad. I don't know. It doesn't sound like the best place to be living. Yeah, he was showing this right here. People just hanging out in their cars at these hotels, just living in their car at
Go ahead, because he's getting Canada.
the hotel, not in the hotel, not paying for the hotel. You got that going on. Of course, that can have nothing to do with the woke or any of that type of stuff going on there. You have Bill Maher interviewing Mark Cuban, the business entrepreneur, and talking about the difference between it being a liberal and woke. And it seems like, some of that's going to the wayside. A lot of people are rejecting that. We saw it recently with the newest movie. I thought this was interesting. Captain America, right? It's so bizarre because what happened is kind of like a momentum thing. Like a lot of people after so many years realized, oh, they're just trying to feed me some ideas in these movies, and they've decided to stop seeing these movies, particularly Marvel or whatever. They saw wokeness in these movies in some cases, and now all of a sudden these companies have realized, oh no, we can't do this anymore. We're losing tons of money. Let's stop doing that.
Yeah.
So they start making movies that are more normal again. And apparently this one is not as bad as a lot of people are thinking it is, because the reviews, the critics are giving it a 52%, and
I would definitely recommend Light and Easy's Jumpstart Go. The high protein smoothies are delicious, and the lunches and dinners are great, and it's definitely so convenient.
Lose weight, eat healthier, live happier with Light and Easy's new Jumpstart Go.
With Aware Super's retirement income account, you can stop working and keep earning, tax-free.
Head over to cleverrange.com.au and find the perfect homeware products for you.
The average person's giving it an 80%. So you got 48 versus 80, which would indicate it's probably very light on that. But no one's going to see it hardly.
Yeah.
Because they all just assume any new movie made or any new video.
Yeah, he's one of Trump's big time supporters. He done a Nazi salute, though. I seen him do it. Unless it was AI, I seen him do it.
Game made that it's just going to be full of this stuff, and they don't want to watch them anymore. They don't want to pay any money for them. So it's just kind of weird seeing that all happen. But then we have this story. We have, of course, Cash was just sworn in today, I think like literally an hour ago. Or maybe, it depends when I put up this video. Probably a couple hours ago, maybe.
And did you hear Trump called himself king? Maybe you posted that yesterday, Di. But Trump posted himself as long live the king, meaning him.
And
they're disturbing. They're disturbing things to me.
Everyone cheering. It's kind of amazing. I can't even believe this guy. I mean, it's just amazing this guy got in. Because if you know who this guy was, if you knew his history, you would never believe this guy would ever have got in. If I would have said 3 years ago, if you knew who this guy was 3 years ago, and I said, this guy's going to be the next director of the FBI, you'd be like, there is no way that would ever happen. He's there. He's probably one of the one person out of all of them that got chosen that you would think would not have gotten in. This dude got in. Unbelievable. This guy wants to literally clean the entire thing out. Don't be surprised if most of it's gone. Like just most of everybody's gone. in the next couple months. And it's just like straight up clean house. All right. We're talking, it's pretty crazy. But at any rate, you get the idea. So there's that. I wanted to, like I said, I'm going to do a video about this maybe tomorrow or the next day. Poltergeist and cultural values and comparative interpretation of a Brazilian and an American's case. So they're investigating the supernatural. Our GOV was investigating, and we've talked about this. I've talked about this before on this channel. We've talked about Stargate, the old one, not the new one. That project. And how they were doing stuff in this realm as well. And of course, they would deny all this forever and ever. But now, recently, our president has declassified a number of things, particularly JFK and a lot of other files. And these are some of the ones that were also unclassified. And they talk about all the supernatural studies that they were doing. And so I want to get into that in my next video. I think that's really interesting. And I'm also going to get into some of the ancient understanding of who the devil is and actually trace it back to the Garden of Eden. I'm going to show you the various gods in ancient culture and where the devil was in all these different ancient cultures and what god it was. It's kind of crazy. I had a researcher go through it, and you can even see it. It literally, one of the gods, one of these ancient gods, literally points to the Garden of Eden. So I'll actually show you who the serpent was and who he is worshipped as in all these different cultures and who he is today. Of course, Prometheus, I'm sure you've heard of this movie, the Alien movie franchise. Prometheus was actually who he was as well. I'll get into all that, and I'll get into that as I get into this whole topic with these declassified documents and stuff on my next video. But then we have this clip here of Bill Maher and Sam Harris talking about Elon and his history of buying companies and fixing them up, kind of like what we saw with Twitter, now called X. Now he's saying, well, wait, actually, that's what he's just doing with the GOV itself. Oh, this thing is totally screwed up. We need to get in there, cut out all the fat, make it better. And of course, Sam, he just can't leave it there. He just can't.
Oh, yeah. U.S. government, super fucked up. I'm going to fix it. I think that's what...
That's giving me great foreboding, that. I told you he done it. Wow. Just blatantly done the salute.
Gets his juices flowing. But the caveat to that is he's actually behaving in a way that is reckless and unethical and can identifiable people over massively, and he doesn't care.
You knew Sam Harris had to say something like that. It's pretty hilarious watching this whole podcast because, of course, even things that are just already established fact, he's just got that little bit in the back of his head like, can't be true because he's evil. Both of them are evil. He just has this weird, he just can't stick with logic anymore, apparently. At any rate, getting over to some other stuff on this video, apparently our president wants to literally go there himself to Fort Knox and personally inspect if all the gold is there. I mentioned that there was these bizarre, massive orders of gold. They were anonymous purchases from Britain that were so large that they actually, as a country, had to start limiting the amount of gold being sold because these purchases were so massive. And some are wondering if that is related to the fact that they were going to go audit, of course, Fort Knox. I don't know. I guess we'll find out what happens if all the gold is still there or if they mysteriously just all sneakily put it back in. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, he did.
But so there's that as well. I thought that was an interesting thing that just came out. We have, of course, a lot of interesting stuff going on right now. We have some new information about that Delta Air in Toronto, that plane, of course, crash. That apparently Delta Air was specifically that sector of this. I forgot what the.
I saw it, Diane. I sort of said, I think Trump is pulling off a coup here, and I really meant that. And it looks like the salute is a hint of where they're thinking. I think he's doing a revolution here, a coup. I really do.
the name was, but it was a certain type of Delta Air flight. And it was, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but that part of Delta Air was all female pilots. And they would call it unmanned because it's not a man, it's a female, right? So unmanned. They're unmanned flights. And from what I understand, that's what was happening. That was, so I also think there's other, I think a lot of the issues are probably faulty parts and because there was 2 engineers from Boeing. I used to be an engineer myself. I think a lot of these things we've seen of recent are because of faulty hardware or things on these planes. But in some cases, it happens to be this DE, thing. So then we have the fact that Mitch McConnell apparently is exiting the Senate race. Of course, you had, of recent, he hurt his leg. He fell down some stairs. You've had him with numerous situations where he just doesn't know where he's at. Obviously, probably a good time for him to retire. I don't know, man. Probably a good time to retire now, bro. Not knowing what's going on around you is probably not a good time to be in the GOP anymore. Of course, you have our vice president talking about rebuilding Western civilization. Let's check out what he has to say here.
Can I die?
Rebuild Western civilization. We cannot rebuild the United States of America or Europe by letting millions and millions of unvetted elite.
Of course, you can't continue this route. And you can look at what's happened in England and Germany of recent. These are important things. We've seen a number of different videos come out. We had 60 Minutes come out as well with an episode recently. Let me show you that. Got it around here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. This is kind of amazing. All right. 60 Minutes joins German police as they go into a man's home because he shared some sort of meme online. Is it a crime to insult people online? Yes. Is someone committing a crime if they repost a lie? Yes. So apparently this is the type of stuff they're saying. Check this.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher.
So this is the kind of stuff they're doing in Germany. And there's a video of them going into a guy's house here. Where's it at? I don't know if they show it on this. Yeah, they do. Here we go. Where's it at? They went into the guy's house. Yeah, here it is. Let me show you this.
With state police as they raided this apartment in northwest Germany.
And they go in there and they take his laptop and everything.
Inside, 6 armed officers searched the suspect's home, then seized his laptop.
All because he posted something online that they didn't like. They said it was, of course, racist. And what it was probably, I'm guessing, I'm not sure because it didn't tell us what it was or didn't show it to us, but it could be very similar to what happened to this man here in Britain of recent, where he was visited by police and a counselor to his home because he had written on social media, Christians, should stand up. And it was referring to particularly another religion and what was going on in our country. And again, this is the kind of stuff they'll classify this as bad for simply saying something like that and pay you a visit. And in some cases, I've seen them kick down doors on grandmas in the UK and literally put them in cuffs. No joke. It's pretty crazy. And here's an example of London today. Not exactly what it used to be. Looks a little different now. As you can see there, this is just strolling down the street in a certain part of London. Not like it was back in the 70s, where it would be almost, it'd be completely unrecognizable compared to that. So at any rate, I think you get kind of the idea. Even this guy here, David Wood, here on YouTube, no longer can go to the UK. Apparently he just got, of course, banned, from the country, and he can no longer go there. But so there's a lot of other stuff going on, but I think we're going to end it there. Kind of wondering what some of you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.
Okay, guys. God bless.
If it sells, it works.
Improve muscle strength.
No. We wanted to finish on. Hang on. Okay, get there.
Things are moving quickly, my friends. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a ton of stuff in